across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, I have to say, if you live long enough, you get to see everything once. 26 members of the British Parliament voted to defend and support and protect a Hamas-backed, Iranian-backed terrorist organisation in the United Kingdom that had attacked Bryce Norton, that had plotted attacks against ordinary British servicemen. Unbelievably, these people were allowed to get away with it. And I have to say to you, what sort of a country do we live in when we have members of parliament who are willing to back terrorists who are attacking this country? Now, look, you can complain about the Israeli Defence Force. You can complain about Hamas. You can complain about what goes on in the Middle East. You can say that some people are right on some things and wrong about the other, and you can do any of those things. But to attack the infrastructure of British engineering, as took place in Bristol, to attack the infrastructure of Britain's military defence on behalf of Iran, is not acceptable. Do you know what I think we should do with those 26 members of parliament? Cast them out of town. Mrs. Sultana, A, has a ridiculous name, and tonight has B, defected from the Labour Party and has now decided to join with Jeremy Corbyn. And John McDonnell also, he voted, but Jeremy Corbyn, on this occasion, she's supporting him. I don't understand what's going on here. This reminds me very much of when we had all those MPs from Birmingham supporting the new airport in Pakistan, but not giving a toss about what took place in Birmingham. Why are we importing the world's woes to this country? Why are the BBC so obsessed with believing that issues in the Islamic world are more important than health and education? I'm going to sit here and say to you, and we've got a brilliant guest to talk about this, but clearly Asher will want to throw in his thoughts first. I'm going to sit here and tell you, I'm not pro-Israeli. I imagine you're not either, right? Let's just remind ourselves of something. If I disagree with President Macron, I don't say let's abolish France, right? I'm neither pro nor anti-Israeli. Israel exists as a country because of the self-determination of the people of that country. It's none of my business what I think about it. Now, I'm happy to criticise people or not criticise people based on what they do in the immediate sense, but that's not about abolishing a country. And I will tell you this. What side are you on when you vote for a Labour MP who is backing Iran over the allies of the United Kingdom, who believes that it's better to wave a Hamas flag than it is to support our armed forces, who thinks that the ills of the world are related to the West, not the suppression of people? And the most morally bankrupt thing of them all is this. Who are the people that have suffered most in recent years because of Hamas? It's not the Israelis, it's not the Brits, it's not the Americans, it's the people of Gaza. Independent election abolished, independent education system destroyed, aid stolen, infrastructure ripped to pieces, economics decimated, and then they started a war with Israel, which I will tell you was done in order to provoke Israel. How do I know? Because they slit the throats of the peaceniks. They went into the kibbutz where people were supporting peace and killed them. They went to a festival, a concert, where people were celebrating peace and killed them and filmed it and sent it to their family. They wanted to do something so egregious that Israel had to intervene. And they did that while sitting on their fat, lazy, UN-funded backsides in five-star hotels in Qatar. I don't believe in the sincerity of the Hamas leadership. I wouldn't even give them that much credit. These people are nothing more than thieves, and you and me are the idiots that pay for it. Ash, your view.
Yeah, and not only that, Hamas, obviously, they've got the UN on their side, they've got the NGOs, Amnesty. I mean, they're already actually arguing, because what Israel and the states were doing was actually getting the aid straight to the citizens, and Hamas don't want that, and the UN want to basically look after Hamas and make sure they can get the aid to sell it. I mean, this is the only place where they say there's famine going on. but the supermarkets, shopping centres and the cafes are all still open. How can you have a country that's got a famine and all you can just get a takeaway? I mean, the reason is Hamas hijack the aid and they then sell it in their supermarkets, and obviously there's a lot of poor people. They're selling big bottles of water, like the one now, $20, and Israeli troops are giving them.
Okay.
But the other thing that I want to say about the prescribed groups, why aren't the IRGC prescribed? I mean, they've got sleeper cells in this country. We know what's been going on. We know they've been threatening citizens. We had that problem outside the Iranian embassy. We've got Hamas former leaders living here who've bought their council houses. But yeah, why are the RGC not a prescribed group?
Okay,
Anyway,
I just want to do one thing. Let's read you the names of the 26 MPs, Labour MPs and others. Adnan Hussein, Apsana Bijam, Sukat Adnan, Sahara Sultana, Diane Abbott, Imran Hussein, Tahir Ali, Adrian Ramsey, Carla Denya. I mean, look, this list of names, once again, what are they? The radical left and the Islamists. That's the reality. We now have a religious faction in the House of Commons in a way that we have not had in hundreds of years. Not even the DUP are technically a religious denomination. Anyway, let me read this to you. We've got a guest in the studio. I'm really pleased. I've only met him very briefly, so this will be the first time we've had an opportunity to chat. But Elliot Sereni is a British-Israeli surgeon who has served in the Israeli Defence Force in Gaza as an officer and a doctor. This is the shocking bit. His son survived the October the 7th attack. He talked to his son on FaceTime as he was running from Hamas terrorists who were shooting at him and indeed killing others at the musical festival. He believes that anti-Semitism in the UK is reaching levels of the 1930s. Look, before we talk about anti-Semitism, I want to thank you for coming on. I also want to say to you, this is clearly going to be a very difficult topic for you to talk about. We appreciate you coming on to explain it to us, because many of our viewers, as you will imagine, are not Jewish and have no connection, have never been to Israel. Let me ask you this. How does it make you feel when you see 26 MPs supporting Hamas openly in the House of Commons when your son came within millimetres of being murdered by one of these terrorists?
I think it's ignorance. I think the support of prescribed terror groups has become normalised. We can see this with the marches, the horrendous marches that have been happening every week. And we can see this also with the disinformation in the media. The media now does not report on what happens in the Middle East. The media is now a tool, it is a weapon in the conflict, it's indeed part of the conflict.
It's a propaganda arm of Hamas.
Well, we can see the atrocious, the reporting of a fictional attack of hundreds of people in the Al Ahli hospital when the hospital is still standing. Just to mention
Jeremy Bowen, that was.
Yeah, a number of horrendous...
which caused riots, by the way, all over the world,
Elliot,
and the cancelling of a peace talk.
Elliot, you've, as a doctor, I will tell you, I think it's clear, even though we've never met before, what my bent is on this. I'm firmly of the view that we collectively, that is Israel, that is Britain, that's everyone, have collectively failed by allowing Hamas to be the government of Gaza. And I think that the people of Gaza have paid a heavy price for our stupidity. But as somebody who has run into gunfire in order to help both civilians and members of the military, I mean, I just don't know what you must be thinking when you watch us back the very terror group that destroyed Gaza getting back into power.
These are terror groups which are illegal in most Arab countries. They're illegal in Saudi Arabia, they're illegal in UAE. As the King of Saudi Arabia said, or was it the Foreign Minister? He said, the West is becoming like the Middle East and we are becoming like the West.
Yes. And it's now the centre for jihad. And the rich people, the rich Arab countries used to send their sons to private schools in Britain. They won't now because they're worried about them being radicalised here.
Listen, the people who are supporting these organisations in the United Kingdom, the vast majority of them have never set foot in the Middle East. They can't speak a word of Arabic. They're very confused, very ignorant individuals who do not understand. I must stress one thing. Islamist terror groups, whether it be Hamas, whether it be Daesh, ISIS, they kill predominantly Muslims.
Of course.
This is obvious. These are evil
But
organisations.
Elliot, can I interrupt you? I support the liberation of Gaza. The problem is it needs to be liberated from Hamas, not Israel. Israel have got no interest, and this is what upsets me. If you were going out protesting against the Hamas government of Gaza, if you were going out protesting against the way overseas aid has been wasted, and then you could say the IDF is not the solution, but the reality is not even the IDF think they're the solution. The solution is a decent government in Gaza.
We left Gaza in 2005. We have no interest in Gaza. It's the beaches there are beautiful, and before October the 7th, everyone forgets that there was an October the 6th. As you say, shopping malls, a huge amount of international funding. And it's all the vast majority of this money was to build the terror infrastructure. But in spite of the vast proportion of it being spent on this, some of it did trickle down to the people. You didn't have homeless people in Gaza before this war. You didn't have people without access to healthcare. I used to teach Gazan doctors.
It certainly wasn't a prison camp, as they all seem to parrot. Even Cameron said that.
Yeah, I mean,
ridiculously.
This is just hyperbole and nonsense. As you say, Hamas is it's a terror group. Its covenant is to globally exterminate Jews. And it has always promised that it would invade Israel.
What I don't understand, I said this to somebody the other day. I said, look, imagine. So first of all, I think it's always a very dangerous situation to say this land was stolen from me, simply because it requires you to fix a date in history, doesn't it? And you get that with the Falklands. What I always say is it's about who lives there at the moment. They must have the self-determination. But you sit there and you think to yourself, I've asked people before today, okay, we abolish Israel. What happens day two? Now, I believe what happens day two is those Jews we can't evacuate from Israel will be killed. That's what I'm sure would happen. But these people, these young people in particular, seem to have this ludicrous view that everybody will get together and sing Kumbaya at the Wailing Wall and
But they're the same people as like Gays for Palestine. They just can't connect the stuff. They're just full of hatred, and it's a fashionable thing. But the other thing people say, what's Israel got to do with us? The people aren't joining the dots and seeing that this same psychology, the Islamist psychology, is what the 7/7 bombings were, is what the Manchester Arena bombings were.
True.
Is what the just down here, the Borough Market, all these attacks, they're all come from the same hymn sheet. So we're all at this war, and it was only the German Chancellor who said with Iran, we should thank Israel for helping the world in this. This is what they should be doing.
But we have been to an extent supporting Israel. Britain doesn't have a strong military alliance with Israel. It just doesn't. It never has had. But I think that we did help in a small way when there was the drone attack on Israel.
Yeah. I mean, it is astonishing. It is astonishing that there is support for these organisations. It is astonishing the lack of knowledge. People just don't understand. I might add that 20% of Israel is not Jewish. I served in a predominantly non-Jewish unit in the Israel Defence Service.
And over 50% aren't European descent. They're from Arab countries.
The vast majority of Jews in Israel are those who've been ethnically cleansed from Arab world. I mean, within living memory, 1/3 of Baghdad used to be Jewish, a quarter of Tripoli in Libya. These countries have been emptied of their Jews.
Although there is, Elliot, just to throw back, there is the Avi Shlaim argument, which is, had European Jews not caused a bloody big war in Palestine, the ethnic cleansing wouldn't have happened. I don't believe that, by the way. I just feel I should put it to you.
Avi Shlaim clearly has a bit of a problem with their timeline. The pogroms and the massacres of Jews in Baghdad, the worst was in 1941, 7 years before the state of Israel. Listen, you can blame everything. People are always looking for someone to blame in their life. Avi Shlaim is a very confused individual, but that's the subject for another.
Well, can we talk about your personal experience?
Let's not do that. Sorry, let's not do that. Simply because we've got a break now.
But after that, we'll talk about your son and him calling you on the day he was at that rave, and he called you being chased and shot at by a Hamas terrorist. So we'll talk about that.
Asher, can I just say?
What's up, man?
You were leading up to the break then when I interrupted you, weren't you?
Well,
I'm sorry. Do it.
Trailing ahead, So we'll be talking about that in a couple of minutes.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is The Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. We've got Elliot Sereni here, who is a British-Israeli surgeon who served in the Israeli Defence Force, proudly served in the Israeli Defence Force. And I honestly think that that what they've done has been phenomenal in terms of trying to rid Gaza of Hamas. Sadly, it doesn't look like it's going to last very long, but OK, fair enough. Let me ask you, Elliot, about what happened with your son, because we've all heard, in fact, I visited the site of this festival.
The Nova Festival.
The Nova Festival, where people were gunned down. In fact, it's an incredibly moving place because they've got the pictures of all the young people who were killed. But tell us what happened on that day. When did you first become aware?
I was aware in the morning. I turned on the TV, the Israeli TV channel, and I saw that something was going on in Israel. I rang my son, as you do, just to say hi, and I pressed the WhatsApp video by accident, and he was running in a field and just said, I can't talk, and put the phone down on me. And he was actually, at that time, he was actually running, being chased. And my son went to the festival. He's a student of economics in Tel Aviv. And he went to a music festival to have some fun.
Presumably at that point, and I don't want to wind you up, but presumably at that point, you knew that somebody was chasing your son, attempting to kill him.
No, I had no idea.
Okay.
But you knew he was running.
He knew he was running in a field.
So what was going through your mind?
I just didn't understand why he was running in the field. And,
do you think that the fact that you could see a terrorist attack was going on and you knew your son was running in the field, but you didn't put two and two together, was you deluding yourself?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was a bit worried, but it all happened very slowly, if you remember that morning, until the information came out. Yeah. But my son, when the rockets started landing, they fired some rockets from Gaza first. He had the foresight to say to his friends, let's pack up our tent. It's a sort of Glastonbury-like event, although very different to Glastonbury.
Sure.
In fact, the diametric opposite to Glastonbury, because you didn't have people chanting death to anyone. This was a peace festival, he went first to the car park, and then when the shooting started,
that saved his life. And he said earlier, I was chatting to you, you said he said let's get out the car, and that also saved his life because he would have probably got killed in the traffic jam.
Those that stayed in the car.
Does it not? What a stupid way of phrasing the question. How does your son feel about the fact that he's just a guy studying economics, going to a music festival, and suddenly he has to worry about international terrorism and violence and hatred and let's be honest, a pogrom in Israel?
How does he feel? He's getting on with his life. He was very shocked. It took him a very long time to come to terms.
He must have lost friends.
He did. Yeah. He lost a friend. We lost a cousin who was killed that day. I have a friend who was taken hostage and was rescued by the IDF, one of the four, with Noah Al-Ghamani. Listen, it's been a very, very difficult year. The real story is those that lost their lives that day. And I might add, once again, that the terrorists they killed everyone they saw. They killed Israeli Arabs, they killed women wearing the hijab, women reciting the Shahada. As they were being killed, they shot them. They killed 2 Palestinian coach drivers at the Nova Festival from East Jerusalem.
But this haters going to hate. I know it's a silly comment.
You have to realise Islamist terror groups, they only know how to kill. And it is astonishing that people in this country support this and look upon them as some kind of heroes. OK, well, we've got a caller calling in. Khalid is in Leicester. He's a regular caller to the show and actually has a lot of sympathy for a lot of the things that we say, but obviously has strong feelings on the Middle East. I'll tell you what we'll do. Why don't we literally just put Elliot and Khalid together, both sensible people, but obviously have very different views. Khalid, what have you heard so far that you don't like?
I think, look, we're all human beings, first of all, so we should have empathy for human beings, regardless of their race, religion, background. That should be the starting point. In other words, we don't look at a person's background. We don't look at what, if we have empathy, consistent sympathy, consistent condemnation, then that's fine. But the problem we have is that we condemn one, but we have sympathy towards another. We pick and choose. We are very.
How can you have sympathy for people who are sworn to kill you and rape you and kill as many people as you? How can you have empathy and sympathy with them? How could you relate to them even?
Ash, Ash, with all due respect, who's talking about that? I'm talking about if any innocent life is lost, we should all feel empathy and sympathy.
Well, yeah, but Hamas don't. Israel do try and limit civilian casualties.
Let's put that to Elliot, because I think that's a reasonable point. I fear that we don't lament the ordinary Palestinians and the ordinary Gazans that die to the extent we should. Now, you know my view that that Hamas has been far worse at this than anybody else, but we don't seem to take that into account enough, do we?
I take it into account. I've been to Gaza. I taught Palestinian doctors. I've treated Palestinian patients. I've treated those injured while undertaking terror attacks. I've operated on them. I operated on one from who was shot in the seafood market terror attack. I'm a doctor. I see all people as the same. I don't see any different. War is terrible, and I want one thing to make clear here. The Arab-Israeli conflict is the smallest war that has ever happened in the Middle East. Okay, you're talking about less than 150,000 people on both sides that have been killed in the last 100 years. Okay, this is an insignificant conflict compared to the Iran-Iraq war, 1 million dead.
Well, Syria currently is less than a decade, is more than that.
Syria...
hundreds of thousands.
Okay.
Hundreds of thousands. Yemen, 500,000. Yes, people are obsessed. The Iraq war.
Yeah. Khalid, why is it that people are obsessed? Because I have to say, my instinct is to say that this is a small regional conflict that actually Britain doesn't need to be massively involved with.
I might add also, of course, one civilian dying is horrific. One non-combatant is one too many. But unfortunately, in a war, people die. In Israel, we have the lowest collateral. I mean, there are those who they've been to Gaza from West Point. Even British generals have been. There is has not been an asymmetrical war with a terror group embedded in the civilian population, where so few civilians, 1-to-1. In fact,
and of course, I will say one thing: we would expect that from a Western country, but nonetheless, it's an achievement.
No, you wouldn't expect that. In Iraq, it was much more. In Iraq, there was up to 9.
It's the lowest ratio ever in Israel.
Sure. But Khalid, that's a reasonable point, isn't it? We would expect a Western country to have as few civilian casualties as possible. Israel are clearly leading the way on that. Similarly, it is a small regional conflict. Why do I have to listen to it every day of the week on the BBC?
Because we got British UK nationals going over there and joining the IDF. Many of them have committed war crimes and posted them online, which they are being investigated for. We have with the UK British government.
Well, we've got one here. We've got a British guy that's joined the IDF.
Okay, well, if you've got any examples of that. With the names of the people.
I mean, Khalid, do you believe? Khalid, I'll let you speak. I just want to ask you this: there are some people who would say that Elliot, whatever he has done or whatever he hasn't done, simply by virtue of being in the IDF, is a war criminal. Are you in that field, or do you believe that there are people who've acted legitimately in the Israeli military?
Of course, there are people who have acted legitimately. There's many IDF soldiers, as Elliot will know, have left the IDF simply because they've got a moral conscience. They've realised.
Listen, Khalid, أنت بتحكي عربي يا Khalid?
Sure.
So you don't speak Arabic, okay? So no. You're not from the region. I guess you've never set foot in the region, okay? But don't worry. Listen, Khalid, I know. Unfortunately, some young people, their only experience of war is Xboxes and movies. But in reality, in a military, only about 1 in 10 of those in the IDF serve in a combat role. You know, you've got dental hygienists in the IDF, you've got nurses, you've got dog handlers. Now I'm hearing there a chance of death to the IDF. Do you think that a dental hygienist in the IDF deserves to die? Do you think someone like myself, who was a surgeon, who I treated civilians in southern Lebanon, I arranged their health care in Israel, I treated civilians in Gaza.
Arab civilians, yeah.
Arab, of course, Sunni, Shia, whatever, it's all the same. The IDF, I don't know whether you're aware, we have a search and rescue. We took part in treating injured from the earthquakes in Turkey, in Haiti, in Morocco. We do a lot of good work. Okay, so just to let you know, it's not like in the movies. You know,
they saved Yahya Sinwar's life in prison with a brain tumour, and he went on to be the mastermind of October the 7th.
Give Khalid a minute to talk back. I mean, I guess your position is there should be no intervention in Gaza at all. But my argument with that is, if you look at, Hamas won the election, but they shoved their opponents off buildings. You know, you've got these gays for Palestine, the treatment of homosexuals, the treatment of any minorities. There aren't many left, by the way. But, you know, they call the area where black people live the slave in honour of slavery from Africa. I mean, it's Hamas are running that place so badly. Is there no argument for saying get rid of these people?
Nobody's saying Hamas should be run. My point is, look, since the invasion of Gaza recently, how many medical professionals have been killed? There's hundreds of medical professionals have been killed. Not only they've been selected, they've been taken out, and they've been killed. Many of them.
I don't think that's happening.
In that case, Elliot, let me.
I'd like to address that. I'd like to address something.
I mean, if the IDF had not been there, they wouldn't.
I'd
have
like
been
to
dead.
address something here. I would like you to realise that of the 3,500 terrorists that entered Israel on the 7th of October, 1,500 were killed. And we have their bodies and we know which terror groups they're affiliated with. And it's important to understand, we use Hamas as a shorthand. It wasn't Hamas.
It was a coalition, was it?
Every Palestinian terror group, whether it be Fatah, whether it be Jamaat al-Islam, Daesh, PFLP, they all took part.
And Gazan citizens as well.
And unaffiliated.
Yeah.
Every single one of those 1,500, they were not soldiers in a nation-state's army.
Correct.
So they are listed as civilian deaths.
Okay.
It's important to understand that. Okay, so those 1,500 are listed as civilian deaths who died that day. And likewise, the figures quoted on the BBC, well, by definition, they're figures from a prescribed terror group. And that includes all of the Hamas fighters.
Elliot.
Including under 18s.
I'll tell you what upset me. I had some involvement with Ukraine. Right now, I wasn't in uniform, I wasn't in the military, but I helped with some aid, like a fair number of thousands of people did. Even I know that if a missile goes off, you cannot have the total number of people dead listed within 15 minutes. You may never know the total number. Even if the BBC believed that the IDF had shot that missile at the hospital, they knew or ought to have known that the body count that was created by Hamas could not possibly have been real.
They said 500, which is ridiculous for a start.
Exactly 500.
When I listen to Khaled, I only talk about something I know about. I'm a doctor, I'm a scientist. I only talk about places I've been to. Okay, I'm astonished at someone like Khaled who hasn't been to the region. I think we're living in a post-truth world where people they don't understand the difference in fantasy and reality. They're confused. They think.
I'm sorry, Elliot. I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. I think it is, and I'll give Khalid a final sentence on this. I think it is the right of anybody to say, "Well, no, I've not been there. I'm not the biggest expert, but I have a right to a political opinion." I mean, he's going to turn around presumably and say, "Had Israel never made the incursion, there would have been no civilian deaths." And I guess that's right. Anyway, Khalid, why don't you have the final word? We're coming back to Elliot to talk about Glastonbury in a minute, anyway.
Yeah, just quick. I'll be very brief. But look, Elliot, 2004, you know, there was Operation Protective Edge, where over 2,100 Palestinians were killed, and up to over 11,500 were injured approximately. Now, if, for example, if the Palestinians said, look, if it was reversed, then because they've killed so many innocent civilians, we're gonna kill 60,000-70,000 Israelis. Do you really think the governments of America and the UK and the US would not send their armies in?
Okay, Khalid, thank you so much. Elliot, respond to that.
We left Gaza in 2005. We had no interest in Gaza. The day we left, they have been firing rockets at our civilian centres. Hamas does not have any military targets. It only attacks civilian centres. We have to respond. We're a country that has to defend itself. We have to defend our borders, and it's regrettable. We wished them all the best in 2005. We left them all of the organic
the irrigation. Yeah.
We left it all
greenhouses.
So used to supply Marks and Spencers with organic fruit and flowers.
It's all
It
gone.
is astonishing. It is astonishing. We had no interest in Gaza. We left Gaza. We uprooted the last Jew from Gaza.
Even the dead bodies were uprooted. The Jewish dead bodies.
So okay. I understand why you said what you said before, Elliot, which is it's frustrating when people who know nothing. I watch Glastonbury, and sorry, I don't watch Glastonbury. I saw a clip of Glastonbury, and first and foremost, it's pretty lame the way that these people pretend to have an interest or a knowledge in this subject. But death to the IDF. I mean, let me tell you something. And Elliot may not know this, and the viewers and listeners may also not know this. What you are watching and listening to is 14 seconds ago. This is not happening in real time. And the reason for that is we've got a dump button, which I would demonstrate, but it'll annoy the gallery if I do it. But if Elliot were to now say something off colour, I can press and delete the 7 seconds that just happened, and then I can go back a further 7 seconds. The BBC should have a system like that for Glastonbury. They have it at Eurovision and regularly use it. I will tell you, the reason they don't have that is because they're all delighted with that. And I have to say to you, if you want a serious political debate, a serious debate about the IDF or foreign policy, screaming abuse at someone at Glastonbury or banning somebody in the skull cap is just garbage.
Yeah, but I mean, even if they don't have the delay, they let it for over 40 minutes. It would take about 3 seconds, because I've worked in that business. It takes about 2 or 3 seconds to press the button. They were actually saying, oh, it's not as simple as pressing a button.
Yes,
it is actually as simple as pressing a button. And not only that, doing live feeds and all the other stages, they're going to press the button and suddenly they're on this other stage. So the delay sort of is a red herring. You could do it within 5 seconds and make an apology for something that just went out.
I mean, I'll tell you what I saw, Elliot, and I'd love you to respond to this. So there were people who were very critical in the newspapers of a group of young lads who went on an Extinction Rebellion protest. And after they went, they immediately ran round to McDonald's and had their dinner in McDonald's. Now, one would assume that if you're a vegan or interested in extinction and all that sort of thing, I think the reason that those kids did it is because they are being dragooned in by universities that don't allow free speech. If you want a girlfriend, you're going to have to be on the Gaza protest or on the Extinction Rebellion protest. And actually, I feel like, OK, these young people don't have moral courage, but at the same time, the young people just trying to go to universities, I hold the academic institutions to blame. What do you think?
What do I think? I think it's a problem. The academic institutions, many of them have been infected with a very antisocial ideology. I mean, listen, this Glastonbury, I might add the fact my son, it did hit home to me that my son went to a music festival with people singing and dancing and wanted to have a nice time. And at this festival, we see...
the hate.
We see hatred. We saw the usual tropes. Zionist boss, he had to work for a Jew. It was the usual. That's a bit of a nod to Kanye West. Then from the river to the sea, which I might add is a genocidal quote. It comes from the Arabic, min al-maya ila maya, Palestine Arabia, which means from the water to the water, Palestine will be Arab. It will be contained nowhere else as Arabs. And so that I found more offensive to his death than the IDF thing. And once again, death to the IDF. I just think to myself, there are now, as I fought shoulder to shoulder with Muslims and Christians and Jews and Cherkessi, there are now people fighting against Islamist terror group that want to destroy the Western lifestyle. They want to kill gay people. They want to subjugate women. They want everything that these guys in Glastonbury with their sleeping in their yurts, eating quinoa and drinking kombucha or whatever they do, but to see them chanting death to the IDF, I mean, it's
suicidal empathy.
Isn't it laziness? I mean, I always think that if you go and chain yourself to a fuel truck whilst you're at university, that enables you to go and work for Goldman Sachs when you graduate and say, hey, I'm bothered about things. I mean, you're filming pulling down a slave owner's statue on a phone made by a 9-year-old in China. Right? I think it's all about mitigating the fact these people don't care.
But it was suicidal, you know, like Gad Sud says. I mean, all these white British people in the audience, and he's going, you want your country back, you can go and F yourself. And they're all going, yeah, they're cheering on their own destruction.
Yeah, I mean, and it was shocking to see it. It's very disappointing. And I do, as you say, the fact that BBC allowed this, is shocking.
Well, they promote it, don't they? And then they get caught, and there's a little...
But listen, just to say another quote in Arabic, you say لكل فعل رد فعل. To every action there is a reaction.
Yeah.
And this is not innocent. These are not just these entertainers. We have seen the rise in what is happening. We have seen people, the guy in Golders Green with a knife. We saw synagogue being desecrated last week. And
the two Jews in New York that were murdered, Washington.
And what happened in Colorado,
Yeah,
what happened in... This is creating hatred, and it is shocking. And once again, and as you said, even the lie on the BBC about the Al Ahly hospital being destroyed and hundreds being killed.
Blood libels.
There were huge demonstrations around the world.
It's like a bit like the Kristallnacht in the 1930s, Germany. It's getting a feeling like that.
I think there's a big difference now. And Elliot, thank you so much for coming in. But my view is, I think there's a big difference. I think that the ordinary working class Christian British people of this country are incredibly proud that we bet the farm on destroying Adolf Hitler. And I think there is an special offence to British people about castigating and attempting to destroy the Jewish population. I think it's something, if you want to boil it down to the very simplicity, we got it right once and we're not going to...
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is the Glastonbury audience doesn't represent a reflection of British society anymore. It's just totally of a certain class. But anyway, look,
Elliot, sorry, Elliot. Alison has asked one final question, one sentence. Is your son okay?
My son is... Thank you very, very much. My son's doing very well.
How about psychologically? Is he all right? I mean...
He's doing well. He's studying. He's working. Thank you for asking, Alison.
Okay, thank you so much, Elliot. Serene, and a love to obviously everybody in your family who was injured or indeed killed, because we know that there was at least one on October the 7th. We will be back talking about the BBC.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side.
Abortions. I've had a...
Well, I have to say, we don't have many medics on. What a good bloke.
Yeah, a great bloke, and great to hear it from the horse's mouth, someone who's experienced
The
it
only
all
thing I
and knows what
disagreed
he's
with him
about.
on was when Khalid contacted us. I don't agree with the whole, if you've not got personal experience, you can't debate it.
No, you can debate it, but what you say is sort of irrelevant because you don't know what you're talking about.
I say that because we've got an abortion debate coming up, right? So anyway, look, you know, there is a debate about the legalisation, criminalisation of abortion. I have to say, one thing that gets my goat is the glorification of abortion. I can understand if people think it's a necessary evil, but those people who think it's marvellous, I just find it distasteful. Lily Allen, as ever, is distasteful. Let's for the love of God, please not. Let's have a listen to what she had to say about abortion.
Abortions. I've had a few,
Right.
but then again, I can't remember exactly how many.
What, really?
Yeah,
Why didn't this come up in last week's episode? We were just talking about abortions.
because I was just letting you run with it.
Reveal everything.
I can't remember. Yeah, I think maybe like, I want to say 4 or 5.
Yeah, I've had about 5 too. Lily, I'm so happy I can say that and you can say it and no one came to shoot us down.
Which is unfortunate. I wasn't there, if I'm being honest. Shoot us down, by the way, is a reference to talking, not actual violence. Lois McClatchy-Miller is Communications Officer for ADF International. Lois, look, I can see an argument for decriminalising abortion to avoid backstreet abortionists killing women. But I have to say, what sort of a person, what sort of a mindset thinks abortion's marvellous?
Yeah, like we just can't pretend anymore that the abortion regime in this country is all about those really hard, rare exceptions. They make up just a tiny percentage of the number of abortions that happen on a daily basis. 1 in 3 women in the UK will have an abortion in their lifetime. And we see obviously examples like Lily, it seems that it's used as almost a form of contraception. And to hear it talked about that you know, these babies in that callous way, it really drives that point home.
Can I ask you a question? Because, look, I mean, I'm instinctively against abortion.
They're almost proud of it,
By the way,
aren't
the reason I'd make abortion illegal now, actually, is because we really now have to do something about the population crisis. So actually, it's not really a religious thing. But look, what happens, Lois, if somebody says to you, oh, come on, the morning after pill is 10 cells, right? There's a big difference between that and when the baby's born. I don't know what, when a baby becomes sentient, but I'm absolutely certain that a fertilised egg is not sentient, and I don't think any sensible person would say that. Is there not an argument for saying, OK, let's keep abortion legal, but we're just going to cut the number of weeks massively?
So like 18 or 15 weeks?
And by the way, I will say one thing. I'm against firmly abortion up until birth, even in cases of Down syndrome people who actually, I think, you know, we can see on the TV and in life, they give something to society. They
enjoy life a lot.
They have loving families.
Mean they won't enjoy life.
Lois, is there not an argument for saying that we're being too purist going one way or the other?
Well, I think from the data that we see across the population, a lot of women, 70% of women, would actually be interested in decreasing the abortion limit, which it's technically still 24 weeks, although it's been decriminalised up
Which
to
is
birth.
a sentient being. And I know people that were born at that age and are perfectly normal.
Well, indeed,
functioning
exactly.
Humans.
Exactly. I mean, as medical progress takes place, 24 weeks seems more and more ridiculous, particularly if you consider that most of Europe has a 12 to 15 week limit. So 24 is already a vast outlier. Now, obviously, we have conditions and situations where it can go up to birth, which is absolutely crazy.
That's just
and
basically
awful.
baby murder, I think, isn't it? It's just murdering babies.
Let's go on to Freezer Belgian Beaver, who is a journalist and somebody who, look, you made a brilliant point the other day when we last debated this, which I've thought about long and hard, which is you turned around and said, look, Andre, one of the reasons why you're so firmly against abortion is because you come from a country where abortion is legal. And actually, if you came from a country like you do, where abortion is illegal, you would see the significant damage that does to families and to women. Explain why you feel that way.
I mean, the biggest reality here is that in the Western world, people live in a world where everything, you know, the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of choice, reproductive health especially. But in countries that are less developed, let's take Pakistan, India, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan.
You're from Kazakhstan.
I'm from Kazakhstan, and there are a lot of things that you're just legally not allowed to do, or it's because your parents don't let you do it because of a certain social image that you need to represent.
Yeah.
And there's such a big stigma on like shaming the woman and repressing the woman in developing countries, which I think is terrible. And in a way, here in the podcast, she says, I'm so happy that I can tell you. I disagree with the way that they brought it up.
Yes.
I don't think that's the right way to deal with singing a song that is so chipper. That's wrong. But in a way that really shows how it's a great idea that people can talk about it openly.
But Fariza, if you are Lily Allen, you believe that a fetus has no feelings, it is nothing more than the same biological material that perhaps is a toe clipping or anything like that. So you would make a joke about it. So Fraser, I'm going to blow apart your argument by saying, if you have some sympathy for my position that Lily Allen was behaving improperly, then that must mean that you have some sense of feeling towards the unborn.
No, 100%. But also, if you go to an abortion clinic, you look at the women who are there, they're not all singing songs and having a great moment. You know, this is a really hard experience.
Do you think she was doing it in a form of denial and she doesn't really think that light
I think
of it,
so.
really?
I mean, honestly, Lily Allen, in this year only, she also talked about romanticizing OnlyFans. Are we really going to listen to a failing artist who didn't make any music for the past 7 years? And also, she did say before that she felt really ashamed by having abortions. And
this keeps her relevant. We're talking about
that's what I mean. You know, she wants relevancy.
Just a matter of interest, talking about Kazakhstan, which it doesn't matter that people don't know much about Kazakhstan. It's a former Soviet.
Seen the Borat film?
It's a former Soviet republic becoming wealthy because of oil. It's largely secular, but it is quite a conservative country. It's nominally Muslim, but it's quite a conservative country. I mean, would you bring abortion in Kazakhstan?
I mean, there are definitely medical abortions that are taking place in Kazakhstan due to health reasons or whatever it may be, but also in a country like that, in post-Soviet Union countries specifically, if you've got a social status or if you've got a certain amount of money, you can do pretty much anything you want, unfortunately, but that's the way it is. So I would definitely bring it there because there is...
I guess what I'm driving at is, what would be the advantages? How would Kazakhstan improve if abortion came in? Because that is the bit of this proposition that we don't understand, how Britain has improved as a result of abortions.
I mean, let's be realistic. A lot of people in Kazakhstan live in a situation where they don't really have access to the internet or even the healthcare. So a lot of women, girls actually, they end up being married around 17, 18.
Right.
And they can't really, you know, they can't really know anything about reproductive health. We don't have sex education in our schools. So it's kind of, what do they know? By bringing that back, you can give them the option of actually, if you're not ready to be a parent, that's a valid enough reason. Or if you know, unfortunately also the rape statistics are quite high in Kazakhstan, especially forceful pregnancies that people are forced to keep. I think that's absolutely unethical.
Okay, well look, we're going to go to the break, but I do want to, after we come back from the break, to talk to Lois about the emancipation of women, because I've always said there's two things that keep the poor poor: bad governance and the subjugation of women, poor countries that is. Back in a mo.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, this Select Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould, and we're joined by Lois McClatchy-Miller and Fariza Banjul-Beva. Lois, by the way, I've got your name right, which I'm pleased about. That's to Fariza, not to Lois. But Lois, look, you heard what we said before the break, which is that clearly Fariza is not somebody who sat there going, isn't it marvellous that abortion's taking place? Her concern actually is the damage to society that unwanted babies create, but actually particularly what I would argue is the subjugation of women. I've asserted, before the break I'll assert it again, that from what I can see, third world countries, some of them are wealthy, some of them are poor in terms of natural resources, but the thing that they all have in common is the subjugation of women and poor governance. And actually, women's rights are important, aren't they?
Women's rights are important from the womb and onwards. It's interesting to me. I was just looking in the break at the law where Fariza's from, and it does allow abortion on request up to 12 weeks, which is about the same as the European average. So it isn't as different as we might think in terms of the legal standing. But I've seen the impact of abortion
but Lois, what they may do is enforce the law, because I have to say, still to this day, because the law hasn't passed yet, officially, legally, you can only have an abortion if there is a danger to mother or baby. I don't think that was what Lily Allen was talking about. I think that she's got abortion on demand, which is not supposed to be the law.
Well, quite exactly. And I've seen the damage that such a law in the UK, which more or less allows her for any reason up to a very late stage in pregnancy, has done to women, to friends that I know, to women across the country.
Well, they can't give birth. It can damage their reproductive health, and they can't have children in the future. And
also the idea of relationship. You know, we were introduced abortion in the 60s and 70s of this idea of my body, my choice. This is going to make us independent women and solve all these feminist problems. But actually what it allowed men to do, it was, instead of taking up responsibility and being a partner and a father and a husband, it allowed men to say, your body, your choice, your issue, I'm out of here.
Lois, I know that you've got a religious view here, which, by the way, so do I. But are you able to say that we should have two separate things? Those things that are religiously prohibited and those things that ought to be illegal. I'll give you an example. Blasphemy is a good example of something that I believe should be religiously prohibited, i.e. you get into trouble at your church, mosque or synagogue, but you're not going to get in trouble with the law. I would say to you that whilst I think it's incumbent on a Catholic to not have an abortion, I would not criminalise the morning after pill, not at all.
Well, I think my view is actually informed by biological reality rather than based on faith alone. And I think that's really significant because, you know, if a woman came to me and said, you know, I'm really struggling with motherhood, it's really difficult, I just want to end the life of my 1-year-old, Christian or not, all of us are going to say, oh, that's not right. Let's not do that. Let's find alternative ways to support you and support both lives in this situation. And now as we come back into pregnancy, back to 9 months, 8 months, 7 months, these are developed children capable of life, capable of living outside the womb.
With feelings and emotions,
have the same support.
Lois, thank you so much. We're running out of time. Fariza, I just want to say to you, does it not frustrate you that we mix up two things? You're clearly somebody who's extremely caring, extremely worried about the family, and that is where your views, whether people agree with them or not, come from. And then we have these people who just want to bash the Christians, you know, banning people. I mean, somebody standing outside an abortion clinic with a leaflet saying, here's the alternative, seems to me to be sensible. Is it not frustrating that the sensible arguments you make are just crowded out by Lily Allen and idiots like that?
No, 100%, but it's also frustrating when people like me aren't really listened to or heard because we're not extreme enough, because we're on the kind of somewhat halfway, in the middle. Yeah. It's like people are getting lost with the two extremes. I mean, people in the UK have to see 2 doctors before they get an abortion. So it's kind of like, it's not like a tea party that you walk into. And people need to consider things. You know, of course, having a child is a responsibility, but if you're not ready to have a child, that should be a valid enough reason. And there are certain laws in place, and people shouldn't shame these women who decide to use their reproductive rights. That's my opinion.
I've got to be honest with you. Look, we do have a second, Lois. I mean, I do think there is an argument for this, which is not about biology, not about not about science, but actually about pure politics and reality. Why don't we broadcast the more sensible people? Because I think if nothing else, you can respect Fariza's view as people can respect your view. But what we actually get is the anti-abortion lot being characterised by these American lunatics throwing paint at people, and then the pro-abortion lot being the abortion on demand, I don't give a toss Lily Allen people. And I just don't feel like we move forward this debate by broadcasting those two extremes.
Polarised, yeah.
I think the difficult thing is, Andre, it is kind of an all or nothing issue. If this is a child, a little person with rights and a life, then abortion is something very dark and very awful. And if it is not, then it is the opposite. It's absolutely fine. And it's very difficult to find a middle ground in that.
But hang on a second. We've only got 30 seconds, but I will tell you for a fact, at some point the fetus becomes sentient, right? Surely it doesn't have to be black and white, because you can say that 4 cells is not sentient, whereas a baby 15 minutes from birth definitely is.
Sure, but it's where do you draw that line, right? So 2.5 weeks, the heart starts to beat. 4.5 weeks, the baby starts moving independently. 6 weeks, we have brain waves. 7 weeks,
I would have said brain waves, where it starts having emotions and fear.
Right. So, hiccuping, sucking and swallowing at 7 weeks, a lot of abortions happen at 7 weeks. We think this is just a clump of cells, and it's not. It's a living...
I mean, there is also the self-aborting natural process where babies have developed, where the fetus has developed wrongly, and it naturally dies in very early stages. Lois McClatchy-Miller, Fariza Belgian Beaver.
You've lost it just as when it was going. So Belgian Beaver.
We will be back with the press preview with Pete Barnes in a couple of moments.
That's easy, isn't it? Pete Barnes.
0344 499 1000 is the number to call if you want to give us a call. At Virtual Ash.
At Andre JP Walker. Why can't your name be like Pete Barnes? Nice and simple.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, this is Talk, and this is the press preview with Andre Walker, Asher Gould, and Pete Barnes. Okay, Pete has got the newspapers.
We haven't got the newspapers.
No, I don't.
Where's the newspapers? Newspapers. We're doing the story, yeah. speak.
Okay,
Jeremy Corbyn.
before the papers come in, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the big breaking news of the day, which is Zahara Sultana. That is a real person.
That's a kids' show, children's ITV.
That is a real person. She is a Labour MP and she's now set up a political party with Jeremy Corbyn. Now, I don't understand this. There was this independent group. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. From what I can see, they're Islamists.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they seem to be.
Yeah.
They all won from the Gaza ticket.
That's the one, yeah.
But that group already exists. Explain to me what's the story here? What has he left that independent group?
No,
has she joined it?
Yeah, so basically, she's left the Labour Party. She's quit it. She's resigned the whip. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but she left the Labour Party because they criminalised a terrorist organisation, Palestine
yeah,
Action.
to be honest, she's been a long-term critic of Starmer. Hardly surprising because she sits very much on the left of the Labour Party. She's a big Corbynist. She's the embodiment of Corbynism, to be honest. And she's basically said that the response to Israel Gaza was genocide. That Starmer doesn't care about old people and all this kind of stuff, like all the usual hits, as we would call them.
Well, that's true about he doesn't care about old people.
Yeah, so she's resigned. She's gone in with Corbyn, and what Corbyn has essentially done, though at one point he hadn't formally announced it. Zara had kind of preempted it, but he's formalised the independent groups. So rather than being independent MPs, are now going to be part of this party.
So they're no longer independent.
Yeah,
because they've got 6 MPs. Isn't there a certain threshold when you get over?
No, it's at the general election.
Yeah.
They have to have all been together at the general election. Hence, we know this because we had a long argument
yes, we did,
about reform MPs, which we won't bore you with. But look, here's what worries me. You and I agree on some things politically, but disagree, and that will be true of the audience as well. But political party based on religious lines?
Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think. Well, I mean, how many times in our history do we have to show that that is a terrible idea?
Absolutely.
And also around the world, do we have to see that a political
sectarian voting?
Yes, and also sectarian voting leads to sectarian violence every single time.
I've got to be honest with you. I'd love to tell you the story about. I think it was Chalvey in Slough, where there was a guy elected as a Labour councillor, and he then defected to the Conservatives. First-time Labour councillor, Pakistani gentleman. I mean, he wasn't of Pakistani descent. He was literally a Pakistani gentleman. And he defected from Labour to the Conservatives, and they asked him, they said, well, why have you done that 1 week after your election as a first time councillor? And he said, because being leader of the opposition is better than being a backbencher. There is a tradition in Pakistan of not trusting politicians and basically voting for your mate. And it being a pop and basically saying, look, they're going to knock on my door, promise this, that and the other. What I need is a relationship with them. I worry very greatly about the fact that increasingly, in general, Pakistani communities are voting for the Pakistani.
Yes, 100%. And what's more interesting is this has been a long time coming. A lot of these groups have started to formally organise and create movements to kind of enable the kind of Muslim vote, for want of a lazy
phrase. Well, they have
phrase.
websites telling people, and you have that postal vote where the father of the house just takes everyone's forms and fills them in.
There's all these kind of things that go on, though, yet again, it's not classed as election fraud, which I don't understand how that's a thing. But I do find it very concerning because basically what's happened is the Labour Party has pandered to this minority for so long. They've empowered them, and this group has suddenly realised we don't need the Labour Party.
Actually, I could potentially dispute that because they've probably not empowered them. What they've done is empowered the demagogues that lead. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. One of the things that frustrates me, and you know this, Asher less so, because we've been involved in political parties. What happens is the Labour, the Liberal Democrats, the Conservatives, and no doubt the parties like Plaid Cymru from outside England, but I don't know about them as much. What they'll do is they'll go, right, this is an Asian area, let's go to the mosque and let's find someone. And what they get is, they get I won't do the voice because people find it offensive, but I could impersonate what they say, which is, Mr. Khan, he's 80 years old, he's an elder of the mosque. The bloke can't speak English. He's 1,000 years old.
Community leader.
He's in all the expert gear, you know, right? And basically what happens is these political parties get let down. The guy has no interest in being a Conservative, no interest in speaking English, no interest. And you just end up with people. And what frustrates me is that they could pick a 21-year-old, young, thrusting, able person, but that never happens. They always get a guy who basically you have to pump full of formaldehyde to get him through the meetings. Yeah,
that's true. You know what's it's so the old Soviet leaders who used to wheel them out.
But it's just because they're only worried about the short term, 5-10 years, because they know in essence, you see in all these countries in the Middle East, the left and the Islamists get together, then they win, and then the Islamists kill in the end, kill all the left. And the Labour will know about this, but they're only looking for the next 5-10 years to fill their boots, basically, now.
The reality is, without the Muslim vote, the Labour Party are absolutely finished. I think they've lost, at the last polling, it looked like they'd lost about 65% of it. That is a huge chunk.
But hang on,
that's a big problem.
Yeah, but Pete, you're a political strategist, right? You shoot me down on this, but I don't think you will. I think you'll agree with me. Right, so imagine I was sat there looking at the grooming gang thing, and I didn't care about white young girls. I'd sit there and I'd think to myself, I'd sit there and I'd think to myself, look, if I ignore grooming, I get these lot off my back. But who are these lot? Actually, they're the elders that are going to knife me in the back anyway when they can.
Well, Jess Phillips,
you're right.
Jess Phillips only won by 600 votes.
Hang on. What I need to do, actually, is sideline them, right? Sideline the interests of Pakistan and actually start talking directly to the younger people born in Britain. Now, if you were to do that, you would not have a Muslim vote problem.
Yeah, I don't think you'd actually have a kind of this vote problem if you'd actually start talking to larger groups and rather than kind of siloising our politics even further than it is. The reality is, though, that if Angela Rayner ends up taking over from Keir Starmer, which is looking more likely by the day, I'm afraid, and it terrifies the hell out of me, without the Muslim vote, she won't retain her seat. No. So now you're going to have a Prime Minister that has to pander to a community to keep their seat, let alone keep their own party in power. And there's a huge problem with that because it just exacerbates every single issue. I mean, the Islamophobia law they keep teasing is now becoming more and more on the scene. Everybody in Westminster is talking about it, and it would not surprise me if this now is a massive overstep for what we thought was already a big overstep. And it's got to be now to completely distract from the chaos that we're seeing.
But by the way, you can go on YouTube and find my YouTube channel. It's Andre Walker. My latest video is about Article 40 of the Irish Constitution. I know you're not Irish, Pete, but the European Union is currently saying that the 2022 incitement law in the Republic of Ireland is not strong enough. They need to repeal Article 40 of their constitution, which guarantees the right to free speech. They're saying that if you cause hate, deliberately or accidentally, where hate is not defined in legislation, then you will be sent to jail.
The salami slicing the freedom slowly.
I have to say, we're going to get to a stage, if we follow that, certainly in the Irish Republic, but potentially in the UK as well, where if I criticise Islam, I will be in real trouble. I am a Christian. I understand you're an atheist. But one thing we can all agree on is that blasphemy, as a matter of public law, was a disaster, is a disaster.
100%.
Every country that enacts blasphemy and regularly prosecutes it goes backwards as a result.
Yeah, without a doubt. But what's interesting is we're already there. Well, it's called the tyranny of the vague. In other words, our laws are deliberately made vague so they can be used.
Interpreted in any way.
Interpreted in any way. But what is also there is to keep a certain type of person in power without winning elections.
Yes.
Because the law is therefore on their side, not on the people's side. The idea of freedom of speech does not really exist in our law anymore.
No.
To be honest, we had freedom of expression, not freedom of speech, but any of that stuff, it doesn't exist. It is in an interpretation. You change the interpretation, your rights disappear.
I've got hate laws as well.
I've got to be honest with you, I would reduce the protections that exist at the moment, because I have to say, and I'm stealing this off the Free Speech Union, and Ash probably will have heard it, as others will have as well.
They stole it off me.
When Tom Harris came in from the Free Speech Union, he made a point. He said of Lucy Connolly. Lucy Connolly's going, I don't care if they burn down every migrant hotel or whatever it was, or I hope they do, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Right. He said, so first of all, she didn't intend to incite anybody, and nobody was incited. Nobody has burnt down a migrant hotel, citing Lucy Connolly. In the United States of America, to incite someone, you have to go, please now go to... X hotel and do this.
The Brandenburg test.
But this whole well, it might have incited somebody, I don't think it's good enough.
No, I don't. And I've had this argument with many people on the left. You've got to tell me, what is the direct impact of a tweet?
Yes.
Or a post on Facebook or something like that?
Well, say about the hope not hate, the tweets that came out saying there's going to be far-right protests.
Yeah, exactly.
And that did actually incite things.
The prime example,
to them
James O'Brien calling it the Farage riots.
Yes.
That had a direct influence on the situation. The Lucy Connolly's tweet I'm going to struggle to prove that had an impact.
That's really interesting, actually, isn't it? Because I thought I'd come up with something quite clever there, but in fact, actually, there have been cases. In the case of James O'Brien, he has incited violence against Nigel Farage.
Well, even Starmer said these were far-right people who travelled in from America, and then the police came out and said this was not true. He hadn't been inciting it. And when he said we're going to charge and convict them before they're
my favourite of them all was the Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police who made that statement. Sorry, I know this isn't strictly relevant, but when he made a statement that they discovered no case of anti-Semitism on that million-man Palestine march, and he then later said the reason they'd seen no examples was they were so busy dealing with far-right thugs they didn't have the time. And there was just a great moment where Twitter classified his statement as fake news.
Yes, I know, I saw that.
His own description of his own
we
police
saw with Prevent, they tried to put a smokescreen, in fact, succeeded, because, 90% of terror attacks are Islamists, but they tried to suggest, it's all so far-right. There's hardly any far-right
the problem
now.
of their argument is they're trying to put it at parity. It's not. It's a 90-10%. It's ridiculous.
I've got to be honest with you. Neil Bassoon, who, let's be clear, is a factional pro-immigration, pro-multiculturalism or whatever, and certainly a pro-Islamic person, if you like. And what I mean by pro-Islamic is not that he's a Muslim, though he is. He's somebody who will defend the Muslim position, if you like, as it's perceived. So as a police officer, he was not fair and balanced. I have to say to you, I worry about Neil Bassoon, about the people that he prosecuted, leading with National Action, Friar Penketh, Wetherspoons in Warrington. The National Action were accused of plotting terror attacks, particularly to kill Jess Phillips. What they actually did was drank 8 pints of cheap lager in Wetherspoons and began discussing killing Jess Phillips, and they were filmed by undercover police. Were they actually plotting a terror attack or just getting shedded?
Yeah, there's a lot of cases like this that tend to happen.
And I worry, Pete, that he's invented a right-wing terror
confirmation bias.
Yes, but this is interesting because there's a new thing that's come out, a new documentary, I think it is, on this kind of thing about the FBI doing this in America. That basically you kind of push people down a certain path and then you arrest them for pushing on the road they've already been on.
So just to be clear, because people won't understand this, the number one organisation in America that plots terror attacks is the FBI. Right. So what they do is they find people that they believe might be terrorists, and then they encourage them to commit a terror attack, and then arrest them for doing it.
Pretty much.
It's a bit dodgy. I've got to be honest with you. There was that documentary on Channel 4 about this far right group, and what they were doing was they were going doing sit-ups in Vauxhall Park. Being ready for the race war.
That's far right.
To be fair, the fact they were a bit racist and liked exercising in Vauxhall Park, and they're a trainee terrorist militia. Are they?
I know,
Come on.
But this is the thing: is people are using those situations, blowing them out of proportion, and then using and justifying changing the law. In that name, and that's the real perversion and the real concern is that people are willing to do that.
Also, the other reason why, and this is something that you need to really understand. So, first of all, innocent until proven guilty. But it is really important to understand the reason why there are so many terror arrests and so few convictions amongst, if you like, Islamist international terrorists. It's called signals intelligence. And just to explain to everybody, when MI6, MI5 or whoever, GCHQ, managed to find a way of infiltrating the communications of terror networks, they will never, ever, ever disclose anything that allows you to know how that was done. So what will happen is they will go, right, we have tapped the phone of X person, right? But then they go, right, we're gonna prosecute him. Well, all the evidence that we've got from tapping his phone, we're not going to use in court because we don't want him to know we did it. Right? As an example, Osama bin Laden, the reason they knew where he was originally was because they managed to scan the satellite phone network for his voice, right? But he found out about it and stopped. So what then happens is they film undercover some guys getting schooled in Wetherspoons going on about killing someone and put them in prison. And then also, because of this thing, which I do agree with, about not disclosing signals, you end up in a position where they go, 40% of terrorism in Britain is far right. And you go, first of all, there probably wasn't any far right terrorism. Secondly, the vast majority of Islamist terrorists cannot be prosecuted in order to protect the systems that defend our country.
Yeah, there's also the thing is that when they say it's been prosecuted under terror legislation, that's a very broad term again. You know, it could literally just be having a handbook, or it could, you know, being in contact with somebody. That could fall under terror legislation. The problem is that Islamist terrorism tends to end up with a bang. You know, they do when they set off to do something. It's not the same.
I mean, we've laughed at Mozambique before today. Mozambique buys a load of peroxide for his hair. Well, he's never dyed it. And then buys drones. And he expresses an interest in synchronised droning. Right? And you go, oh, come on, Mozambique, let's remind viewers and listeners, Mozambique decided that he wanted to study... This is what he said to get out of Guantanamo Bay. Right, he said, I wanted to study computer science, but it's quite expensive to go to college in Britain. It's not, it's free, just in case you wondered, but okay, fine. So he decided to study in Pakistan. Well, he is of Pakistan, fair enough, but property was quite expensive in that part of Pakistan, so he actually lived in Afghanistan with his family, right, because it was cheaper over the border, right. When the Afghan war broke out, Mozambique wanted to fly back to Britain, but he couldn't afford the airfare. So instead he decided him and his mates would drive back to Britain. Of course they would, from Afghanistan. Now, obviously, because there was a war on, they all got Kalashnikov AK-47 assault rifles in the minivan, so that if they were attacked by the Taliban, they'd be able to fend them off. Right. The court has accepted that Mozambique, the reason he was found in Tora Bora with 6 of his mates and machine guns was he was trying to drive back to Britain. I'm sorry, I struggle to believe the truth of that.
Do you know, and this is the big problem, is that we have a judicial system and a judicial class now that are just believing the most preposterous stories and just always having...
Because computer scientists drive back from Afghanistan all the time.
That's just a normal thing that people do. But what I find incredible is the way they say this as in public statements, and they don't realise how ridiculous they sound.
Absolutely.
That is the thing that I find fascinating, but terrifies me as well, because we're relying on these people in a way to keep us safe, and they aren't doing that. I'm sorry. We have a judiciary now that has no interest in public safety.
But you listen to people when they talk about we have to represent whatever client. Why is it always the same names? Why was it always Richard Hermer, Keir Starmer, Imran Khan, what's her name, Gareth Pearce.
Yeah, Siddiq Khan was one.
Yeah, all the same names. And, you know, they say of Siddiq Khan, hang on a second, how come you're representing somebody who was an Algerian living in Paris who'd never been to London? The reason is because these people are famous for getting terrorists off.
By the way, Mozambique, he was in Leicester. He's now a director at Cage. Told the crowd one of the beautiful chants he made today was "Death to Zionism." I mean, I actually went to school with him. He went to a Jewish school. So he obviously had a bad time there, didn't he? But he's still involved in stuff. So you're right. It's a bit suspicious what he was doing in the middle of Afghanistan.
But it upsets me because what bothers me is, Pete, if your grandmother was being beaten up or something, you know, you wouldn't get these smart lawyers helping prosecute or helping, you know...
Legal aid doesn't exist for anyone in this country.
That's right. it's all they support is the absolute rotters. Oh, Levi Belfield. Oh, let's sue the British government so you can have a wedding in prison.
All the boat.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous.
All those boat people, they're getting, you know, 40 grand a year.
Shabir Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, wants to increase legal aid for asylum seekers. And I'm like, how much longer do you think the British public are going to sit there and accept this? It is preposterous to me.
I will tell you I had the best idea. Priti Patel. You don't often hear people say that.
That's a rare sentence.
But what she said was, she said these law firms, that there is something called vexatious litigation, which is whether the case has merit or not, you are just filing court cases over and over again in order to harass people. And what she said was, look, if you take the case of one asylum seeker and file 50 appeals, which sometimes happen, probably not 50, that's an exaggeration, then what happens is the law firm is a vexatious litigant. Right? And what happens is, first of all, the law firm has to pay its own bills, and secondly, that law firm has to seek the permission of the High Court to file any further appeals. We'll be back with Pete Barnes and Asher Gould straight after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, it's the press preview with Andre Walker, Asher Gould, and our guest co-host is Pete Barnes. By the way, talking about the debate we had on earlier, Tony said, as a Freemason, I find abortion a hard debate. My answer to that is, I don't know why, because it's completely irrelevant to Freemasonry. Freemasonry has many things, but abortion is not involved, largely because it's entirely men. OK,
right,
Pete,
let's start with tomorrow's papers today, the Daily Mail, the press preview. Teargate, day 2, and Richard Littlejohn says everyone's missing the real story. I wonder what the real story, but Littlejohn's probably got it. And John Moir, Reeves made all women look weak.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about that? The cry. I mean, Thatcher and Theresa May did it. Theresa May. They both did it on the way out, though. It's a different kettle of fish. You're actually crying while you're in office because of pressures. It's bad for women, isn't it?
No, it's shocking for women. But let's not forget that this woman, she rolled herself up in the woman flag, for want of a better phrase. Like, she was celebrated as the first female chancellor, as all that meant absolutely anything. Yeah. It was ridiculous.
Years after we had a female prime
I was going to say, but the thing that really gets me is, she's not just a woman. She's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. People watch what she does and the symbol of the office that she represents. It's estimated that her crying has cost this nation £30 billion.
Yes.
It's absolutely incredible.
How much per tier is that?
Hang on a second. The market did slightly bounce back.
About $3 billion a
It's bounced back
tier.
a little bit. But it's fiscal credibility that has been hit the hardest.
But let me ask you this then, Pete, because I think this is an important question. Right. The tiers were taken to mean she is being sacked.
Yeah.
Now, actually, it probably didn't mean that. I think that because... Look, most of us have good days and bad days at work. In fact, all of us do. But very few of us, our facial expressions can change the market. You quoted 30 billion. I didn't know it was that much, but sure, fine, OK. I think it's an incumbent duty on her to tell us what was going on in order to make clear that it is irrelevant to British
Parliament.
politics.
They constantly lie, but that's their modus operandi, is they lie to us and gaslight us.
I actually think what it keeps in the narrative is that isn't everybody being really mean to her by not saying specifically what it is. The narrative that they've been able to actually spin now isn't everybody misogynist?
Well,
are they people really mean to women? Or now shifted the conversation.
They're being sexist there.
I've got to say one thing. I worry very greatly in politics about quote-unquote bullying, because effectively people stymie genuine political debate by going, you're bullying me. And in fact, I remember there was a guy at my local council who genuinely used to harass officers, and any time there was a complaint he'd go, you're bullying me on the grounds of mental health. And actually I worry very greatly. So look, if she was upset by the behaviour of the press, by the behaviour of the Labour Party, by the behaviour of Keir Starmer, I don't give a toss.
Yeah.
What I care about is the fact that there is a fear in this country that she is going to be sacked and a left-winger is going to come in who is going to nail the economy to the desk. If she cries, the markets think that's happening.
Yes, the markets already think it's happening. You might as well, this is just waving a big red flag in front of a bull. It's ridiculous. But the biggest story here is that actually, at one point, she was the most powerful person in the country. She could have resigned, brought down Keir Starmer, brought down the Labour Party. She had all the power, and she has because she's got the acumen of a turnip, she didn't realise it. Do you know, she's still now like the other woman situation, when actually she could have been the most powerful person in the country.
But I mean, often with companies, when someone's leaving a CEO or something, if it's someone they think's bad, then the shares actually go up.
Yeah.
Now, the market looked at this and they said, we like her. We don't. Now it looks like she's going. The city, it plummeted. And when today she came out looking like Liberace in all her makeup, the markets go, oh, look, it's going well. And the markets sharp. They like her. Is that because they can control her?
No, they're scared of what comes next.
Yeah, they don't. They don't like her. What they tolerate her. What they like?
The devil you know.
What they like is that they know Keir Starmer is incompetent and B, cowardly.
Yeah.
They know that Rayner's a moron, right? Just straight up a moron. This woman, while she's not very good, has stood by her fiscal principles. Which is, I will not mortgage this country's future.
So they
hang on a second. I will not mortgage this country's future and waste the money giving it to the trade unions.
Yeah.
Now, let's be clear. If you put Angela Rayner in there, who, by the way, my lunch has a higher IQ than Angela Rayner, she will spend, and hope for the best.
Without a shadow of a doubt, this is one of the reasons that why I actually have a vague respect for her is not changing the fiscal rules. There is a campaign in the Labour Party now to drop the fiscal rules. The fact that Rachel Reeves has not done that, despite the fact that she could have and made her life politically easier, is actually something to be commended. But
the market likes stability.
Yes, the stability. It's always stability. The market likes something that it can predict. The problem with what's going on with Rayner is that they don't know what will happen. Because if Rayner becomes Prime Minister, who's becoming Chancellor? Because there's nobody with any amount of skill there.
And it's probably going to be bad.
And it's probably going to be not as bad.
Do you know,
worse. Because we're even talking about IMF bailouts at the minute.
Do you remember when McRuin was going on about that? Going, I don't think an IMF bailout would be that bad given the situation.
But we were trying to save $5 billion. In the end, we spent over $100 billion over. Yeah. But this is not even touching the size. Our interest alone, I think, is $110 billion on our loans. So we spent $5 billion on the illegal migrants. So it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, but this is what I'm calling the age of consequence. Because basically, the reason it's so bad now is because about 40 years ago, nobody decided to pick a politician to vote them in when somebody says we're not going to pay for that. At some point, the British public has to take accountability for their actions in this. Because the minute a politician got up and said we're going to cut this, we're going to scale back, they got voted out. You can't
put the toothpaste back in the tube once you've given it out.
And that's what we're living through now.
Let's just be clear. We've had people on this programme, on this very programme, who believed that the candidates department at the Conservative Party and the Labour Party had been infiltrated by the KGB or the FSB now. Mounting a campaign to ensure good people couldn't become members of Parliament. Now, I don't believe that's what took place, but can you imagine the standard of MPs is so low that you can credibly make the case that Vladimir Putin picked them?
Well, our Viscount, mate, what was his name? Your mate?
Viscount Monkton.
I mean, he says that. I mean, if you look at what he says, the Tory party, he says, was infiltrated. And if you look at the MPs they had from a certain date, they really are wishy-washy
you look at, and I don't mean to be rude. God, I don't want to be awful about this. Angie Bray was on the A-list and Jacob Rees-Mogg failed the Parliamentary Assessment Board. Angie Bray, very nice woman. I used to be her researcher, but she's just a nice posh bird from KNC, right? She isn't a talented politician. She's now in the House of Lords.
Rees-Mogg is.
But Jacob Rees-Mogg, just to remind the audience, Jacob Rees-Mogg failed his Parliamentary Assessment Board, and let's be clear, God, I'm being horrible to people I like. David Morris passed.
Yes.
David Morris is a hairdresser with a sitting guilt in hairdressing. Jacob Rees-Mogg is Jacob Rees-Mogg, but Jacob failed.
But I think it's one of those things where, again, it's one of those with conspiracy or incompetence. But what I will say on these examples is you could control the belief that CCHQ could control these MPs. That's what they wanted. If they walk down that corridor,
But they just carried on with Blairism, didn't they? That's the weird thing as well.
You have to remember that David Cameron openly called himself the heir to Blair. So why everybody was so surprised that he continued Blairism, I never really understood.
What it might be worth doing is explaining to the viewers and listeners what Pete's talking about here with the Parliamentary Assessment Board and the selection. Effectively, what happens is now they brought in this national vetting, but now the National Party chooses the candidates to a greater or lesser extent. Now, if you are the party leader or the party chairman, you run up to an election in 3 years' time, you want an easy life. So you want parliamentary candidates who are good at delivering leaflets and very good at shutting the mouth, which is fine. So you get a load of identikit no marks. The problem is, under the British political system, these are the people you need as ministers 10 years later. And these are the people that you need as prime ministers 20 years later. And the big problem that we've got in this country now is that our MPs have been picked because they're boring, identikit and safe. And so there's nobody to pick.
But also, with that
100%.
point you just made there, look at our prime ministers. Starmer wasn't even a Labour MP until a few years, now he's PM. Same with Sunak. He only became an MP about 8 years. We really dumbed down our politics.
You've got with, well, I suppose you'd have to say the previous 4 prime ministers, because you would have to say that Starmer, and then before him Sunak, and then before him
Truss,
is Truss
and
and
Boris
Boris
Johnson.
These are people who didn't understand politics and actually failed as British Prime Minister because they weren't very good at politics.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to remember that Liz Truss, the story is she accidentally became a Tory because she wandered into the wrong building. And Boris Johnson, when you look at his rise to become London
wandered
mayor,
into the wrong
he was like
fridge.
10th on the list.
Yeah.
He wasn't even in the top, in the top list of candidates for the mayor.
You are now talking about people, and I include Boris in this list, by the way, because the Partygate thing was just a political cock-up.
Yeah.
Right? But you are sat there saying, the British Prime Minister now, the problem we're having is then we're not picking people who know about politics.
Oh, yeah, most of them don't. Most backbench MPs, or most MPs in general, have no idea how a bill becomes a law. Which is why you have the problem of very powerful civil servants. If you don't have a minister that knows how to run a department, then the civil service is going to take over.
I came in the 2010 intake as a senior parliamentary assistant. And what we did all day, and I'm sorry about this, but it never crossed my mind at the time. We'd get letters about Mrs. Miggins' cat, and we'd do things like we'd advocate for the nuclear industry. It was Morecambe, where the Heysham power station is, that I worked for. We did stuff like that, and we got the M6 link road, so you could get from the M6 to Morecambe without going in the traffic light.
Oh, nice one, man.
Did all of those things. We didn't have an impact on legislation.
No.
We didn't sit there and go...
That's not your job.
Exactly. So the actual job that we were meant to do, which was look at legislation, we didn't do it.
No. Most MPs don't read bills.
No.
Maybe when
they don't play bills
when it comes to conscience votes, they might do. But this is why you get very powerful people like Alistair Campbell, like you get very powerful people in the background, they're kind of politicos, because the actual running of the country is not done by political people, and I count myself as one of them.
You've stolen my little thing there, which I don't mind you doing, but that thing that I've often said, from my experience, most MPs do not know how to make a law.
No, they don't.
And that's literally their job.
Yeah, I know. I literally do this every day.
The EU ruined that because they didn't really have any powers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, the Times, next to Bob Geldof on Live Aid at 40. It wasn't very successful. I think the vast majority of the money went to warlords to buy weapons for the Civil War. It didn't go on butter.
I'm not being funny, but have you ever noticed when Ethiopia got back on its feet, it invaded Eritrea? If we'd have just left them to it might have been...
NHS app to give patients a doctor in your pocket, so you'll have an app, you just do that, and I'll go, Dave,
I'm on strike.
Dave, you've got to have your arm amputated.
I've got to be honest with you. I've got some time for Wes Streeting on this. This idea of doctors as a gatekeeper. So what happens is you get referred to a specialist. Well, look, at the end of the day, if you've got a mental health problem, just go directly to the mental health service.
Yeah.
I've always said...
The triaging of this country is terrible.
GPs are really, really well-qualified, experienced doctors. People think I hate them. I slag them off simply because they're misdeployed. Right. The reality is, what you should do, I love Cyprus. When you go into a clinic in Cyprus, a nurse sees you, she decides where you're going. The doctors literally do operations in GP surgeries, right? Largely because there's only one hospital on the island. But instead of what we're getting is you're doling out penicillin to 5-year-olds, and you've got somebody who spent 10 years at medical school doing that.
Yeah.
And you just think, why,
In France, you go to your GP or whatever, and they immediately just refer you to the consultant of that particular thing you need.
Yeah,
that's
it's
what you
pretty
want.
much... I always find it very funny that all the great EU advocates never say, well, like that healthcare system, you're the one that works.
Yes.
I find it staggering that we never talk about that, but Brussels and Belgium is exactly the same. You actually get referred to the doctor speciality pretty much straight away.
Yeah.
We go all the way around the houses. You have to get an appointment in the first place. You have to go through some, sergeant major who's on the other end of the phone to make sure that you're actually worthy of an appointment.
And then if you're still alive, you get the appointment.
But that's how the waiting list is coming down. People are dying.
I've got a friend of mine who gave up being a GP on the grounds it wasn't a medical job.
No.
And he said, look, he said I've got patients that I could treat, but that doesn't happen. He said I get 8 minutes with each person, and basically, largely, and there is an effect that's measured here. Little old ladies who are bored come in on a regular. Of course, it hurts when you wake up in the morning. You're 80, right? But he said, but I never got to actually treat anybody. Mind you, he did sell me a brilliant story. Right, he said. Once I was in. He came from Salford. This guy, and he said this bloke came in to my doctor's surgery. Right,
that's a Salford accent.
And he went to me. Right, he said, "Doctor, I've got a problem. Can't last as long as my dad." I went, if you think that I'm looking at it, you've got another thing coming. He goes, come on, just 5 minutes. He goes, I am not looking at it. You can get out of my office. I'm not doing it. Anyway, more on the press preview.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, and this is the press preview on Talk with Andre Walker and Asher Gould and Pete Barnes.
Yeah,
now, OK, what have we got, Asher?
Right, don't forget Mike Graham coming at after 6 in the morning. Just the last bit on the Times. I'm cracking on, says Rees, as she paves the way for tax rises. So it was all a big ruse, and we're all going to end up with tax rises because it can't be helped. Yeah, and the ISAs, they're talking about going to be a 20 grand limit to 5 grand.
Yeah.
They're basically the party of envy, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that Rishi Sunak was 100% correct. He said very clearly that they will come for your pension, they'll come for your car, they'll come for everything. Yeah. And, at some point you have to say, well, maybe you should have given him a second chance.
Let's just remind ourselves of what happened in, 1998, 1999, when they taxed, Labour taxed the dividends on interest payments, or dividends rather, that go into pension funds. What's happened? Everybody starts investing in property. The massive increase in property prices happened as a result of that pension change. And I will tell you one thing, if you get the opportunity to do it, and many of you won't, but if you do get the opportunity, you go round Mayfair, Belgravia, Kensington and Chelsea. You go round these places at 9 o'clock in the evening on a night in December and see how many lights are switched on.
Yeah, you don't any day of the week.
Nobody lives there.
Yeah, no, it's true. I live in not far from one of those areas, and it is exactly the same there. They built one of these brand new developments. I'd say about 9 people live in it.
That's right.
And I actually think they've actually just might be a housekeeper. I don't think they actually live there.
Bought like stocks and shares, and a lot of these
repository of wealth.
Yeah, and Chinese people, they don't even want to rent it out. They want it all to be brand new. It's just there
because they want to have it whenever they need it. So I'm not a big fan of kind of the housing control that the level that the London Mayor wants. But what I will say is, I do think that if you buy a property in London, there should be some kind of rule that you have to at least rent it out for a set amount of time.
Well, you don't.
I don't know whether I don't know the practicalities of something, but you are so right. You walk around these areas and they are ghost towns.
But if we didn't continually raid the private pension funds, people would not find alternatives.
We have a savings crisis here.
Yeah,
and it's staggering. I mean, also the idea that anybody under the age of 32 has savings is laughable, or even over that.
Why would you save though? Because you'd be worried like they do what happened in Greece, where they just go, right, well, we've got no money, we're taking 100 grand. If you got property wealth tax,
But can I tell you all something? Right, and I'm sorry to let you into this economic problem. You know how you're jumping for joy about your house price going up? Your house has not gone up in value. The pound in your pocket has gone down in value. That's the problem. And so all that's happening is you're now working twice as hard to own exactly the same house your dad did.
Right?
That's all.
Even the assets will drop at some point.
Oh yeah, and that's the terrifying thing, is when it starts to drop. This is why when you look at when we look at growth figures, the one everybody should pay attention to is consumption construction.
Yes.
Always look at construction and how much, if that sector is growing, because that's when your house is actually going to be worth the value.
The problem is when it comes to economics, people, when they see that house they bought for 50 grand is now worth 250, they think that they've done well out of that. It's actually a disaster because they are far more likely to see their family suffering economically as a result than they are to benefit from that.
Yes, and you end up with asset wealthy, cash poor. It's not just a very rich people problem anymore. You're starting to see the middle class affected by this. In actual fact, that the house they don't have enough money to keep the house going, and and then they have the downsizing.
So now all that happens is mum and dad have to work, whereas dad previously worked. You're still in the same house your dad lived in. But now it's cost 4 times
twice as hard.
And once people get into their skulls, it's not the house price has gone up, it's the pound's value's gone down. Then people start to realise, oh, you know what? Do you know what? I've said this before, Pete, and you will know from living in Fulham, right? There are people in this country in poverty living on earning 80 grand a year. People sit there time and time again and think, oh, these rich people. Everybody in this country is struggling financially, apart from a very, very tiny percentage. I include people who are top managers. You know, I mean, a head teacher earning 110 grand sounds fantastic until you live in Windsor, where the average house is 600.
Yes, this is a huge problem. It's the value of the pound. This is why when Rachel Reeves starts crying and people start selling the currency off, that is why we should panic about stuff like this.
Absolutely
because it is all about the confidence of it, and we don't grow the economy, and because that means that there is the how far your pound goes is less, and it's why the cost of living crisis is not just a kind of slogan; it's a real thing. And unfortunately,
by the way, to return to the original point, if you have savings in cash, you are mental.
Oh yeah,
because it is so dangerous. What has the pound lost in the past 5 years? 25%?
Easily.
In the past day, it's done pretty badly.
If you have money in the bank, that's why, by the way, the value of gold has gone up. Because people are going, at least if we keep it in gold, it keeps some value. Because so what people are doing is they've got the 100 grand in the bank and they've got the £100,000 house, and they go, my house has gone up in value by 15 grand. Yes, but your 100 grand's gone down by 25.
Even that is dropping now. Even where there's still not enough supply, house prices are dropping because people in Kensington they don't want to live there anymore because you've got people who don't really want to be living alongside. This next story, Israel jets attack Gaza on way back from Iran. So what happened was there was a few jets that had bombed Iran and they were coming back to base, and they said to the...
he said, why not? Let's
no, they did. They phoned their superiors at the IDF and go, look, we've got a few missiles left over still stuck on the plane. Have you got any Hamas targets you want to bomb? And they went... Oh, well, if you've got a few left, here's a few targets. And this is, it sounds bad.
I worry about this decision.
It sounds bad, but actually it shows the fluidity and, the training. They're in war all the time. They can literally work like this, the IDF and the IAF.
You can phrase it like that, or you can phrase it, we're walking past the pub on the way home, should we call in for one?
Right.
That's literally, you
it
could
was
argue
a bit like that, but they did go through all the legal processes, hoops and things.
I have to say, what's interesting is watching the IDF with their technological innovations. And compare them to Russia, and in some respects, Russia and Israel have got a similar thing in terms of trying to go into a space and subjugate them. Taking a Gulf Stream and turning it into an AWACS, which is what Israel did, compared to what Russia did. And Russia has still not got air superiority over Ukraine.
I know, it's staggering, but I'm not really complaining. I call it a 2-for-1 at this point.
Nandi unhappy with BBC over Glastonbury.
Oh, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Please, Nandi. Nobody cares. She's an irrelevancy.
Investors can trust Labour, says Bond giant.
Lie.
Says Bond villain.
Bond villain.
Marlene Klass, that bikini put my children through school. I actually wore that bikini. She used to come on the show. I think I stretched it a bit. But,
isn't she the one that complained about iPads being given a school birthday party?
Yeah.
She said that there was a letter letter round to parents saying, my daughter's birthday's next week. If you all chuck in 50 quid, we can get an iPad.
I know.
Get out of it. So I'll tell you what you can have at a kid's birthday: blow football and be happy.
Pass the parcel.
£2 at B&M
Well,
bargains.
those like little plastic bags, you know, you used to get like.
Do they still do pass the parcel?
I don't know.
Do you know what my mum and dad did? My mum and dad said kids' birthday parties were easy. We had no money because we were I mean, it's so middle class, isn't it? We had no money because we were paying private school fees. It's so middle class. But all my parents used to do was get a load of sausage rolls, a load of fairy cakes, a load of sandwiches, a load of cola and lemonade, and just play party games.
And we were over the moon. It was great, wasn't it? It was like amazing.
I was reminded that kids are very happy playing with a cardboard box. Yeah, like, you know, at some points, maybe the iPad is a little extravagant.
Are you happy playing with a box, Asher?
Yeah, I love playing with. I still play with boxes. It's great fun, isn't it?
Moving on.
RAF home to our nuclear fighter jets, protected by 5-foot fences. So we could have some more treasonous action, but that's utterly ridiculous.
we didn't. I mean, our nuclear fighter jets weren't a thing until about 4 weeks ago.
I was going to say, didn't we just buy like 14 of them? Or something? We'd have found money for that.
Probably got no nuclear bombs on them, though.
I know they're pending.
I've got to be honest with you. I think for a country like us, with our strategic alliances, as long as the Trident submarines are in good nick, which they're not.
Yes.
But if we put them in good nick, I'm not sure we need the bombers.
Well, so this is the interesting thing about British defence, is that for a long time we've thrown in to the kind of larger strategic plan. So basically we've not had to upkeep our kind of ground forces or anything like that. Our job was Trident.
Yes.
You know, and because of the alliances, like, you know, they need. So this is why when people kind of got mental about not having like enough in the people in the army, we never needed to.
No,
that wasn't our role in NATO. That's not what we're there for. So I do get a little annoyed when people say there's only 71,000. Well, as long as we've got the Trident program up to standards, which is, like you said, it's not. You know, we're relying on another nation, fair enough, but that's been part of the alliance for 60 years.
War's different now, isn't it? We're going, you never know about civil unrest.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got to take a little break in this one. We'll take a break and then we're going to talk about King Charles having a wee dram of whiskey for £500.
Cheap.
Breaking.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, yeah, as I said, King Charles enjoys a wee dram of £500 whiskey, and here's a reenactment of what it would have been like, because he does a great King Charles.
Rather good drink, you see. And I do like a bit of whiskey. It's like talking to the plants.
He does sound like he's going, doesn't he? Like, anyway, the stats. Yeah, we've got the Jezbollah.
Sorry. We've got to tee that up better.
Yeah,
we'll clip it for socials. Right, let's do this. We'll clip this for socials.
Yeah.
Go. Jeremy Corbyn has launched his own new political party with Zara Sultana. That's a real person, by the way. Right. We are asking you, A, would you vote for Jeremy Corbyn's new party?
On Twitter.
And we've got that poll on Twitter. We'll tweet it at VirtualAsh, at Andre JP Walker. Also, what name would you give it? What would you call it?
Well, I'm going to say I just come up with the name the Jezbollah party.
Jezbollah.
Yeah.
I'd call it the fruit and nut cake.
Yeah. Hands up for a mass.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's currently at 93%. Never would you vote for it, and 7% would
Right,
vote
here's the
for
thing
it.
that I don't
Worryingly.
understand.
I've got it. Present but not involved.
Yeah, that's right. Present but not involved. Okay. So, I'm just going to say to you one thing. Who are you, the 7% who tune in to Andre Walker and Asher Gould and are big supporters of Islamism?
It's probably Khalid. Khalid on Twitter.
He's not a Corbynite. He's not a Corbynite. Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. While you're going through this, I'm going to ask AI for amusing names for Jeremy Corbyn's new party.
Let's go with the Independent while he's doing this data research. And crisis? What crisis? I was having a tough day, insists Reeves. Chancellor is all smiles as she puts her tears in the Commons down to personal reasons. But in a way, that's even worse. If you can't have a chancellor who's got something on her mind that's actually making her weep in the chamber.
Yeah,
it's even worse.
Couldn't agree more. The interesting thing is, how has Liz Kendall still got a job? She's the Work and Pension Secretary. This was a disaster from her department. It's her legislation. Why has she not been fired? Or,
why have any of them got a job?
I mean, that's very true. But, I mean, this was an easy way to hang this disaster on Liz Kendall, box it off, and off she goes. Yet again, the political operation of the coming out of Number 10 is amateur beyond belief.
They're like a student sort of debating
without
society.
shadow of a doubt.
But
this is definitely somebody with a clipboard and a high-vis jacket, I can tell you that.
Jesus. Have you got some...
Okay, let's go through it. The bearded lefties, Momentum 2, the Electric Boogaloo.
It's for Corbyn's new party. AI has come up with these names.
The People's Jam Collective. I think it got into the Sultana element.
I like that.
Okay. The Allotment Action Party, Free Railways and Free Raisins Party, Jezbollah, it did come up, Nationalise Everything League, the Social Justice Chamboree, the Benite Revivalists, Tea and Solidarity Party. I think that's because he used to make tea in all the meetings, didn't he? The Gorb Z Party, the Progressive Picnic Party. I don't know why. It's because the Sultanas.
It's great, a bit of AI comedy.
But can I just say, do not underestimate Zara Sultana. She's a very capable campaigner. You know, she has a huge public support.
But it's what she campaigns on.
Yeah, that's the problem. But
don't you think
very
she's dried up, Sultana?
Well,
Hey, stop raising this.
I was just about to say raisin. But again, Angela Rayner is another one. Like, they might be morons, but they're very personable.
No-brainer Rayner.
Yeah, but, you know, we keep...
She's got charisma in her no-brains, though, hasn't she?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas Starmer's just not much brains and a bit very boring.
Yeah, because he's boring, but Angela Rayner has a bit of personality to her.
Read that.
Yeah, what's it?
Peace and poppadoms.
Oh, right. But no, you probably... That's AI. Remember, AI can be racist. Do you remember when the Google...
It's not racist.
No, it's not racist. It's made you cough. The Guardian. Hundreds killed as Israel steps up Gaza strikes despite ceasefire.
That one, I'm sorry to say, that one is racist. Sorry.
Yeah, that is. Yeah,
I shouldn't laugh at it. Oh. Right, okay. Don't ask your AI to suggest.
Don't ask AI. Brothers Brawls. It's far right. AI. We must ban it. Brothers Brawls and Bravado. Simon Armitage on the return of Oasis. Don't forget you can win tickets and get there with.
Am I allowed to read that one out?
Probably
right,
not.
Let me just ask you. Right, look at that. Look at this one. Right, where is it? Look. The inclusive. Right, okay, no, I can't read it.
I mean, we're probably not worth the risk, but yeah, just do it yourself, have a look.
I will tell you something, there's been some superb suggestions. In fact, I don't think I can suggest anything.
No.
Right, okay, anything. Oh dear. Okay.
Right, well, the terrible, sad story. Obviously, the Liverpool star Diogo Jota dies 11 days after marrying his childhood sweet. This is the worst story. His brother, 26, also a professional footballer, was killed. A tyre blew out or a wheel came off. They ended up crashing and it caught fire, and hopefully they didn't know anything about it. Who knows what went on, but you know, the world at his feet, 28, at the prime of his career at Liverpool, and then this horrendous. And it was because he'd had a lung operation. They said, well, we don't recommend you can fly. So he drove in his Lamborghini, and at some point, the unbelievable, tragic, and obviously tributes everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, obviously talk.
And do you know this is a really awful thing to ask, but given that he is a father with young kids,
3 young kids,
will he get insurance?
Yeah. I mean, there will be obviously life insurance, and the clubs have all insurance.
Because I know it sounds like an awful thing, but I think any parent would think to themselves that's an important.
Well, I hope so. I mean, you'd hope so.
Yeah, I don't really know how any of that stuff works, if I'm being honest.
Do you remember the guy? He came over in Cardiff, and it was a terrible plane crash. He was also at the height of his.
That's right. And there was an argument between his current or former club
who signed him.
He hadn't landed in Cardiff.
I remember
it's a messy business. He hadn't signed yet. He hadn't done this. So who owes the money? Because they hadn't actually formulated it. So Salah, that was his name. That was horrendous.
Okay, so Pete, you've got 20 seconds. What's your prediction for Rachel Reeves?
I think she'll stay. She shouldn't, but she will.
Because of the crying?
Because no, she'll stay because she's not smart enough to quit. But also because they would do it to keep Keir Starmer in place. She goes, Starmer goes, and there's no way that the Grey men of the Labour Party will let Angela Rayner.
And the City wants her to stay as well.
Because the City are backing her. They will keep Starmer in power because they don't want her.
But how long for? Will she go in a year or two?
They'll collapse the government at the end of the parliamentary term. So about 4 years.
Could it force a general election?
No.
Okay, so thank you so much to Pete Barnes, political strategist and occasional talk presenter. You can call Mike Graham on 0344 499 1000 at Virtual Ash.
At Andre JP Walker.
Okay, thank you so much. Mike Graham is up right now.
Morning.
And for those of you who are still with us on Thursday night, thank you so much to Pete Barnes.
Don't take your mic off yet, because plug your new thing.
No.
Are you on YouTube? What's your new thing then?
Oh, yeah. Breaking Embargo, it's on the Peter Barnes channel.
Breaking Embargo?
Yes, so we've got interviews coming up with Kevin O'Sullivan. I've got Fariza, who's just been on with you guys. She's
good, actually.
Yeah, I've got a really good selection of people, actually. We're covering everything from local politics. We've got some geopolitical stuff. It's going really, really well. And, so it's the Peter Barnes channel. You can find it on my Substack. And, I'm pretty much everywhere at the minute. So, it's hard to get
It's all over the place like a mad woman's breakfast.
I've got to be honest with you, that list of political party names. Have a look at your phone now.
Okay, right.
Have a look at your phone now. Okay, we will be back with all of your calls. 0344 499 1000. Pete, what do you think?
I'm just making sure I'm not on camera.
We'll be back with your calls just in a minute.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's fair to say that the gallery liked some of the AI-generated names for the new Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn political party. Do you know what? They weren't racist, actually. We wouldn't laugh at something racist. It's just they were very politically incorrect.
They just needed a trigger warning before.
They were a bit politically incorrect.
Yeah.
And actually, I think we'd have got away with it. But let's not
risk it. If in doubt, leave it out. That's what...
Nuts and Raisins has come up loads of times simply because loads of people think that... I mean, Zara Sultana, I did think was a piss take, but anyway.
Leah Wilshire has said, so a dried-up fruit has gone and joined forces with a dried-up husk. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. What should we call Corbyn and Zara Sultana's new party?
And also, I'll tell you what we could do, because it's late, we'll have a bit of a laugh, but serious as well. What do you think about the fact that there is now a block of Muslim MPs, not MPs who happen to be Muslims, but people who've been specifically elected to push the cause of one religion? Now,
Gaza, they one-on-one. And in Birmingham, you've got MPs that have got a rubbish crisis. They're talking about an airport in Pakistan.
But what I do want to be really, really clear with everybody, if you are a Muslim, that's not what we're complaining about. You have a perfect right to be in public office in any way, shape or form. My concern is people who've been elected in order to be the Catholic delegate,
sectarian
in order
voting,
to be the Muslim delegate,
we don't
whatever.
Want that.
OK, let's get straight to the calls. I don't know who was in first, so let's go for Julie in Manchester first.
Oh,
Julie,
no, and Jane, well, maybe we'll get them to talk to each other. They probably know each other. Julie.
Hiya.
Hi.
Hiya, Ash.
You all right?
Hiya, Andre.
Hello.
What's going on, man?
I'm just ringing up about that lovely guy you had on before, Elliot.
Elliot, yeah, the former IDF doctor and officer, yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to give my best wishes to his son and his family and his friends.
He was great, wasn't he? I mean, he knew his onions. Yeah. He's been around the block. He's been there.
What makes you, as a person who's listening or watching this show in Manchester, what makes you care about him? What was it about him that was important?
Well, he just knew what he was talking about. He was. And you could see him shaking, the poor guy.
Yeah.
Was he very nervous?
He was a bit nervous, but it's going over his head. You know, he's worried as well. He's got friends and family out there.
Yeah.
But and it comes across, doesn't it?
Yeah, also to you, Ash. I mean, I'm really sorry what's happening to the Jewish people. I mean, the vast majority of people are not anti-Semitic.
No, they're like you, Jane, but you don't hear about that. You just hear the mass media and the other side. And 90% of the people are like you, Jane.
Yeah, we're Julie.
Sorry, Julie. Oh, well, that's what I was going to ask. Can we put Jane up? Because she's also in Manchester. You probably met each other in the marketplace.
Well, no, let's not do that quite yet. Julie, let me ask you a question. Do you think that I'm right?
Her name's Lane.
When I said before that we as British people are proud of defeating Nazism in the Second World War, and actually are pretty offended when we see our country being hijacked by anti-Semites.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
Exactly, the enemy within.
Yeah. Well, October the 7th could easily happen here.
Yes.
Well, that's the worry. People still haven't joined the dots. I mean, the bombing in Manchester, that was all part of the same ideology. People are going, it's nothing to do with us. It's a big world war, really.
It has to be said.
7/7 bombings, all these.
Borough Market.
Borough Market was very similar. The difference in Borough Market and the 7th of October is the 7th of October was at 50 or so, 100 or so borough markets put together. But in terms of an individual attack, Borough Market
it was five guys that did it, and as opposed to thousands of people. But it was exactly the same thing. They were cutting the throat. I mean, it's horrendous. I don't want to go into it.
By the way, Mark has come up with a name for the Corbyn party, which I think is brilliant. Kill thee! Oh, no, wait, it's called the Party of Love. That is right, that.
That's good. But what's the feeling like in Manchester? Because I know you have that march regularly on a Saturday. There's a lot of nasty people who are marching around on Saturdays in Manchester, a bit like London.
Oh, don't go into Manchester city centre.
It can be a bit dodgy, yeah. Anyway, look,
it's not only that. I don't,
Well,
it just gets on you. They're idiots.
Yeah, and also there's not many shops left now, isn't there? Since
no, actually, shops are not bad in Manchester, are they?
Are they all right?
I went the other day.
I remember Johnny Roadhouse. That was a good shop. Johnny Roadhouse sold all the second-hand electronic. That was a good shop.
I'll tell you where I went shopping. Ashton in Makerfield.
Oh yeah, nice.
Right?
Yeah,
I will tell you, Ashton. Literally, so there's two Ashtons in Manchester.
Ashton under Line.
Yeah, which is nowhere near Ashton in Makerfield. But Ashton in Makerfield, right, you know what I liked about it? Yeah. It was like traditional British. They had the little sewing shop, they had the little arts and crafts shop, they had the little paper. You know, they had all the little things they used to have, years ago, before every single place was a pizza.
Where are you in Manchester, Lane?
Julie.
Oh, it says
no. Stop looking at that.
Listen, I'm getting
Look at that
Where
one.
are you? Where are we talking to? Where do you live, Julie? Where in Manchester?
Failsworth.
Where? Sorry.
Failsworth.
Failsworth. Do you know Failsworth?
Is it near Longsight?
It's near Oldham.
Near Oldham, okay.
I know Longsight.
Halfway between Oldham and Manchester.
Oh.
Right. Well, let's go to Lane. Do you know Julie Lane? Lane.
Lane.
Jane. Is it Jane?
Look, if you are...
It's Jane.
It's Lane.
That's what I said, Lane.
Oh, darling, you did. Yeah,
do you know... she's gone now. Oh. Lane's gone. You're Lane or Jane? You're Lane.
No, I'm here,
Lane. Where are you in Manchester? Because I know a bit about Manchester. Where are you?
Flying above it, by the sounds of it.
I tell you what, the signal here is shocking.
You what? You're shopping?
No, the signal is shocking.
I don't think that's the only problem with the call, but thanks for warning us.
Shocking.
Yeah. So what have you been up to today? Been to the pub?
Not really. I've been hospital visiting.
Oh, okay.
And I've been told on Tuesday that I've got a bad heart problem.
You've got a bad heart problem, right? Well, so that's good. You're getting it all seen to, though, yeah.
I'll tell you what. It sounds like what they do in hospitals nowadays at visiting is a bit different to what they did when my mum was there a couple of years ago.
Is it?
How are you finding the NHS, though? Are you finding it's doing its job?
Drunken.
Why Manchester?
Yeah, you went to the hospital today to visit a friend. I mean, was it the hospital or was it the hospital club?
Right.
All right.
That just shows it, doesn't it?
All right, Lane. Thank you very much. Anyway, let's talk to I don't know quite what was going on there, but Aria.
Aria, yeah.
Aria in London. What do you want to say, Aria?
Well, I think two things. So obviously Corbyn and Sultana, in their infinite wisdom, have started their new party today, and you know my kind of reflection of it is after seeing the 2017-2019 Labour manifestos, it's really annoying to have another party that just doesn't understand maths. Because we've already got one party in the polls that want to offer massive tax cuts and an increase in welfare and NHS spending. And yet they're just not going to deliver it. So, but
aren't they going to split the vote? Isn't it quite a good thing that it will split the left vote, the right?
Here's my thing. Reform are just as bad as Corbyn, right? Reform want to raise the basic rate up to 20k, and yet they want to inject huge amounts of money into the NHS, into the welfare system, right? And you see actually the decent people in the Labour Party, like Liz Kendall, like Rachel Reed, and they try and make one tinker to the system, right? The winter fuel allowance, stopping millionaire pensioners from getting money for heating. 1.5 billion.
Well, pensioners who get over 11 grand a year, not just millionaire pensioners.
They've had a long time to age it. The people on the PIP payments, right? Yeah. Like a small saving, everyone throws their toys out the pram. I'm looking at this as a young person. I mean, George Osborne's kind of had the right idea that the debt is getting bigger and bigger. We borrowed a huge amount in COVID. We're pushing a debt to GDP ratio at nearly.
Aria, are you the chap that's phoned up who's 18? You've called us before.
I mean, I've called before, but I'm not No,
you're not that young. I mean, what's interesting is, I'll tell you what I agree with you on. I agree that all of these political parties have got things badly wrong. I personally think we're trying to do too much as a country. The reality is we should have healthcare, we should have some welfare, but we're just sticking our beaks into every element of people's lives. I mean, if you think about it, when Robert Peel set up the police, it was illegal to have a police detective. And what they said, if you set up the police, it'll start as security guards on the street. But believe me, in the end, they'll get off the streets, they'll stop patrolling, and what they'll do is they'll just snoop into your everyday life on behalf of the government. That's what's happened. We've not got the basics done anymore. We've got all the baubles.
But it's like, I mean, I kind of do somewhat buy that kind of like Hayekian argument, but I think it's actually like an ignorance of the fundamentals, that we're getting older as a population, we're getting sicker as a population, and we're not really doing anything to address that. And when people do try and address it, we seem to just throw our toys out the fan. I mean,
well, also the younger generation is now poorer than the generations before. That's a big
exactly.
dynamic. Yeah.
And we've now got a situation with Labour's U-turn on winter fuel, which is actually going to cost more than if they didn't do the cut in the first place, where a couple of pensioners who were both on 34k a year, so combined income 68k a year, will get 300k to heat their home. But a single mum in her 20s paying rent on a house.
Okay, can I ask you about the winter fuel payment? So first of all, the argument goes for the winter fuel payment. First of all, everything that you've said, I think, is blown apart by how low they set the threshold. But imagine they'd set the threshold slightly higher. The argument goes that there are two things that kill old people in the cold. One, an absence of money, and another, a fear of an absence of money. And actually, the reason that you're giving them the winter fuel payment is not necessarily because they need the money, but because they won't turn on the heating otherwise, because they're paranoid about being poor. Now, that is whether you like it or not, that is a genuine and provable fact that more people turned on their heating, even those people that could afford it. Is there not an argument, therefore, in practical terms, to do it?
Well, that's true for everyone, right? Like, let's remember why the winter fuel allowance was brought in by Tony Blair in the late 90s. It was because pensioners were incredibly poor relative to the rest of the population. Now we look at it, pensioners earn more than the average worker.
There's but it's only... there's a lot of them that are still very poor. They're not all boomers that have made millions.
It's a reasonable point that Aria makes here.
The point I would make is everyone is poor, right? Yet young people don't get it. Young people get told to put on a jumper, right?
Yeah.
But it's less important for younger people. Older people die in cold, whereas younger people can do other things.
Well, they can,
they can run around.
There's no doubt that if you take the totality of public policy for the past, say, 20 years, there has been an enormous transfer of wealth from poor to rich. There's just no doubt that that's true. I mean, if you think about
because of assets, people owning assets as well.
That's been de facto young to old.
Well, I agree with that.
Well, that's because young people don't have any assets, which are the things that have gone up, whereas money's reduced.
Let's just explain this to everyone. Aria, I'm not saying this for your benefit, because the minute you say Hayek, I know you've read something about economics. Just to explain to everybody, inflation is a transfer of wealth from poor to rich. I'll explain why. Because if you've got a house, if you've got a house, then it goes up by 10%. Then you have, on the face of it, earned 10%, right? Okay, the pound's gone down in value by 10%. Okay, but your house has managed to insulate you against the fall in the value of the pound. If all you're doing is buying food, your costs have gone up by 10% and you've received no benefit. So what's happened is the person with the house has got 10% richer, whereas you have got 10% poorer. That, in general terms, is why inflation is taking from the poor and giving to the rich. I mean, that is a nightmare, isn't it, Aria?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think part of the issue is we've got addicted to both this weird idea that we can have Scandinavian public health services and American-style taxes. I mean, like, I'm of the position, and I've realised this is unpalatable for a politician to solve, that we really need to almost have higher taxes and lower spending. That any time someone even gets close to suggesting, like, oh, maybe this is a bit excessive, oh, maybe that is a bit excessive, then
the problem is
Corbyn and Farage are kind of this is the point.
The problem is, Aria. The problem is the fat in the public sector. I mean, if you look at it, I think I'm right in saying, forgive me if I'm wrong, but when Tony Blair came to power, the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead had something like 700 staff. By the time he left, it had 2,500. doing basically the same job.
But the bulk of Tory austerity, and I think even George Osborne himself has said the cuts were probably made too excessively in the local government area, because when you cut that, then you had to pay more on extra services as a result, kind of like lack of early intervention. But I kind of don't buy the initial. I mean, I partly buy it. The initial kind of Blair era shift in the public sector, but I don't actually think. I think there's some elements of waste in it, but
I'll tell you what frustrates me the most: the economic
especially
the economic obscenity of Brune McRuin, as I like to call him, was that he comes up with this idea of the public-private partnership, which is this: that in order to keep it off the government's books, you get Balfour Beatty to borrow the money to build a hospital or build a school. Everybody knows that the government can borrow at a lower rate than the private sector. So what you're doing is you're going to lend lease and basically saying to them, you get out a more expensive loan than what we would have got to build infrastructure we wanted to build, and we're going to pay you a profit on top. You've basically doubled your cost of lending. And why have you done that? Because Gordon Brown was determined to cook the books. He wanted to spend and make it look like he was fiscally frugal. Next.
Yeah, but
more next. Let's go.
I was like in primary school when Gordon Brown.
Can you throw out the break, Aria?
We are where we are. It concerns me that we've got a kind of like left-wing kind of part. Really, like Corbyn, cannot be trusted with the economy. Investors will flee. Cannot take stuff seriously. But to me, it just seems like actually it's the same economic.
We're meant to be in the ad break at this point. I mean, what's going on? He's still talking. This is meant to be an ad break.
Do you want me to push the button?
Yes.
Well, can we get Aria? Can you throw us to a break, please?
Aria, what you have to do now, because they completely ignored my break, you have to go. This is the Late Show with Andre Asher and Aria. More next. Go on, do it.
Sorry.
No, just missed it. Do it.
You've blown.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is the Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. By the way,
Are you chewing?
I bought a drone.
Oh, not
Another
what,
drone.
a second one, yeah.
Yeah. I've got.
I don't know how people survive without having a drone. We've all got drones.
I launched
these
an
days.
airstrike on my dad.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
I'll tell you one thing. No, I mean, what I did was I just blew air on him from the rotor blade. I'll tell you one thing. It does prove a point about aviation. So I got this DJI Neo drone.
Yeah.
And I bought the stealth propellers, right, which basically just a bit quieter.
So you can invade Iran.
Yeah, so I fitted two of the stealth propellers. It's got 4 propellers. 2 of them, and I used the screws from the old propeller. I thought, they fit in.
Oh, that's a schoolboy error.
They fit in fine, but what I'll do is with the other two, I'll put the actual screws that came with the new propellers. Do you know something? It shows you the danger of getting things wrong in aviation.
Yeah.
The drone took off. The propellers that had been fitted with the wrong screws exploded and the thing crashed. Right, now, to be fair, it's got guards around the propellers and also it crashed on my bed. Therefore, it wasn't damaged. But it's amazing. Even though you were fitting propellers with a screw that had previously been on there, for whatever reason, like the propellers just wobbled and smashed into the guards.
So you were laying on your bed going, I'll just fly me drone while I'm lying on my bed?
No, I'll tell you what I did.
Yep.
I'll tell you what I do. It's been a bit hot recently, hasn't it?
I use it as a fan, do you?
I use it as a fan.
That's quite a good idea, yeah. A drone fan.
A drone fan.
That's very
Basically,
good, man.
it flies for 25 minutes. You just fly it above
It's
your face.
amazing, aren't they, these drone things? I remember the original. My mate Dave bought one when they... Do you remember when you could fly, but they were really hard to fly? And they did
awful.
And he flew it round, and it had all these 3 propellers, and they're going like thousands of revs per minute, and it just went on to his girlfriend because he couldn't control it and landed, and it ended up like a hat, and it was all twirled round her hair, and she was really angry, obviously, because she had this beautiful round hat at an angle stuck on her head. Had to cut her hair out.
I love that woman who thought expanding foam was mousse. Do you know that expanding foam? Yeah. I mean, that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, so Dre Force 1 is the name of the drone, and I've been flying it around and attacking Big Stan regularly. Now,
That's his dad, by the way.
My dad was a hard-working man. He was the boss of a major company. Great guy. He even built his own house. Unbelievably, it's got 6 bedrooms. It's absolutely amazing. But
what do you mean built? Is that hired builders to do it?
Well, no, he's a project manager by trade, and he was an electrician and whatever. He was boss of an electrical engineering firm. Yeah. But he has pulled off the laziest thing I've ever seen in my life. The laziest thing. In his back garden, he's got 2 sun loungers. Yeah. One that has good sun during the morning, and one that has good sun in the afternoon. And the reason I say this is the laziest thing I've ever seen is because he goes to lunch and then goes to the other sun lounger rather than dragging one sun lounger.
Yeah, but that's quite sad because you'd have to do that every day.
Oh,
so
it's only 4 foot.
Yeah, but I mean, no, I understand it, man.
By the way, if Asher Gould thinks that you're not being lazy, right, that is no endorsement.
Yeah, that's not a good
that
endorsement.
Is not an endorsement.
That's really bad, yeah.
Okay, this is Kelly in Portsmouth. Kelly, you're on talk.
Hiya there. I should say Assalamu alaikum, shouldn't I?
No.
No, yeah, you can do.
Do I not say Assalamu alaikum?
Salam salam, but we're not Muslim.
I've had to learn to say it just to identify who is Muslim.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but do you know what's really nice, though? They start smiling, but my friend, she attacks me. She says, you don't let them smile, you know what they're all about. And it's like,
that's
hang
unfair.
on a minute.
That's not very nice. I mean,
I will be scared.
I will say one thing.
It means peace be with you,
If you say salam alaikum to a Muslim,
it does.
They are. If you say salam alaikum to a Muslim, the reason
God be with you.
The reason they're delighted is because you've made a bit of an effort. I mean, obviously they don't speak
any faith, any language. I mean, I once said ni hao to a Gurkha. He wanted to cut my head off. That was an anonymous.
I had a friend of mine. Who came over from Bangladesh, and he was at Golders Green tube station, and he thought that he bumped into an imam, so he walked up to him and said salam alaikum, cornered this bloke. He was going on about Islamic faith in Arabic or whatever. He was an Orthodox Jew, but the bloke.
But it's similar. It would be shalom aleichem for them.
Can I say? I lived in Preston for 13 years, and I do have to say, Deepdale started to become a very difficult place for me, and it did.
Why is that?
Because I used to take my boys and my daughter to Portsmouth Gymnastics Club. But to get there, I had to go through Red Light District. And not only that, it was... Look, I remember the day... Yeah? Right? I remember it word for word. What the attitude was like when I was at school.
Yeah. But we're not like that. But anyway, thanks, Kelly. Let's go.
I'd say thank you, Kelly, but I don't understand the relevance of all of that. Anyway, okay, Herbie is in Harrow.
Good morning, gentlemen.
All right, Herb. Are you a Volkswagen Beetle?
Yes.
By the way, I will say one thing. If you phone us up and say, I know you're going to cut this out, what will happen is nobody will hear what you say next.
And we cut it out. So, Herbie, what's...
If you say, I know you're going to cut out what I'm going to say, we will cut it out. It's as simple as that.
Now, I'm going to say, the new name for Jeremy Corbyn's party, Brothers Grimm,
The Brothers Grimm.
Yeah,
I've got to be honest with you.
Grimm.
Nuts and Raisins is good, though.
Nuts and Raisins. There were some absolutely
yeah,
superb ones.
Raisins, but Brothers Grimm definitely would make the case.
Yeah.
Definitely for them too. Lovely. What
Nice
a lovely
one.
name too. Yeah.
So what's going on, man? What's going on in Harrow? Harrow on the Hill and all that. Is it all right in?
No. I'm afraid it's gone down. It's gone down very badly.
Down the Swanee.
Yeah, it's not very pleasant anymore. You know, all the dealings going on and
dealing. You mean drug dealing?
There's a lot of dealing, especially North Harrow.
Yeah. It's just a nasty place. I've been here since 1917. I'll tell you what, I'm glad I'm going.
But most people associate Harrow with being quite posh. I know it's because they've heard of the school.
Well, there's Harrow on the Hill and Byron was buried there. But why are you saying you're leaving? Where are you going, Herbie? Herbie goes bananas.
Herbie goes to Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to Felixstowe.
Herbie goes to Felixstowe.
That's not a very good title for a movie.
Herbie goes to Felixstowe.
That's true. But
why are you going to Felixstowe? I mean, you got the sea there and that, and you're down the coast. Is it? What is it? Because it's like old Britain.
I've got a holiday home there. My partner's there as well. So.
And is it more like the old-fashioned Britain that you remember when you go down there?
To a degree, you know, it's still very pleasant. Mind you, they're building houses like nobody's business down there. Every affordable space has been taken up. And, you know, they're just ruining the place anyway. And, of course, we got, you know, more hairdressers than ever before. We've got about 10.
Well, that's very handy. Have you got American chocolate shops as well?
Oh, yeah.
Do you go when you go into these Turkish barbers? Do you ask them if they cut hair? Because some of them don't.
They're not even Turkish.
Some of them don't. I always say to them, look, I don't mean to be rude, but do you actually cut hair? Because the problem is they'll have a stab at it if they don't know how to do it.
I'll be honest, I do use one of them down there. He's a very nice chap. He does my hair very good.
I'll be honest with you.
Some of them are actually very good, aren't they?
I'll be honest with you. I've got to be honest with you. I've got a theory about these Turkish barbers. I've got a theory. I think that the actual staff in the shops are not drug dealers.
Yeah.
I think that they don't necessarily. I think they don't necessarily know they're money launderers.
Well.
Sorry, they may not, but as I say, he does a very good job. He only charges me £10. He does the waxing of my ears, my nose.
Does he burn your nostrils with that sort of thing?
Oh, I've seen that. They set fire to your face.
Set fire to your nostrils?
No, it's the wax.
I'll tell you what I like.
So they let it solidify and then they yank out your nasal hairs.
I'll tell you what I like, Herbie.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I like, Herbie. I like that cheap lemon aftershave that they stick on.
Oh, lovely. Smells beautiful.
Apparently that's real lemons. They just mash up and stick with alcohol.
Yeah. People go, "Oh, you smell nice." Yeah, well, lovely. There you are, you see. So he's done a good deed for me.
Yeah, can you sell me the cheap lemon aftershave from
I'm sure you've got Turkish barbers down in Felixstowe as well. When are you moving, Herbie?
Over the next couple of months, I hope.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah.
All right, Herbie, thank you so much.
Where I am, I open my patio door and I see the sea. I'm 50 yards from it and nothing in front of me.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful.
Well done. Well done.
That's why he's moving there.
Well done. What's he going to do? He's going to see all the illegal migrants coming.
Yeah, that's right. That's the first port of call.
OK, are we going to a break or are we going to Steve in Walsall? We'll go to Steve in Walsall, then we'll go to a break. Steve, you're on talk.
Good morning, Ash.
Morning, Steve. What's going on, man?
Well, just like the question of these immigrants seem to have died a death. I'm not hearing about it anywhere. But
I know we've got used to it, haven't we?
No, but what's concerning me, the amount of people that are coming in here now from Africa, them bringing all the children with them, them within a matter of months of being here, them giving birth to more children.
Yeah.
Now, surely, for Christ's sake, this country can't carry on like this.
Well, of course not.
And nobody seems to be bothering about it.
Well, we all talk about it all week. We've been talking about it, Kevin's talking about it on his show.
Yeah, but that's us, right, to be fair. No, our producer's saying, well, you can't say that because we talk about it. But everyone knows we'll talk about it. Everybody knows the other place will talk about it as well. But let's be honest, it's not going to be on BBC Radio Leicester, is it? Let's be honest.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not a racist by any means. Good luck to these people.
No, we're the idiots. We're the idiots. If I am from a toilet of a place in Africa and then I realise that I can get a free house, free benefits and everything, don't even have to learn English, I'll come to Britain.
Yeah.
Our problem is we've got to say a couple of things. First of all, the solution to the world's problems is not to empty everywhere and move to Birmingham. But more importantly, we have to be selfish in our immigration policy because how are we going to deal with an ageing population population if we're dealing with the waifs, the strays, the unemployed and the unskilled
And
of the
apparently
Islamic world.
1 in 20 of illegal migrants have ended up in prison. Which, I mean, if that's unbelievable.
I mean, it just beggars belief what's going on. I mean, is Starmer going to carry on borrowing money to finance all these immigrants?
Well, this is, but if you're saying, but Steve, if one is saying, I won't say you because it's not you specifically, but you're turning around going, we need to be caring for people. We need to spot people. You are throwing British young people out on the streets because you can't get them a home. And we know we don't have enough houses, so we're bringing more and more people to Britain. And what's our solution? Prioritising the recent migrants. What moral bankruptcy is there to put an Afghan in a home and watch a Brit eat on the streets?
I don't know. I mean, it just beggars belief. Everything with me. I mean, is Starmer going to carry on borrowing money to finance this? And at the end of the day, he's going to end up.
Well, he's going to tax us, isn't he? He's going to tax us.
In the country.
That's what's happening.
He's going to end up bankrupting the country, Starmer.
No doubt about it.
We're bankrupt. We're bankrupt now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You know yourselves. If you borrow money, you've got to use it wisely.
Yeah.
Not throw it down the drain.
Our interest is 100 billion alone, and they were arguing over about saving 5 billion, which they failed to do anyway.
The problem is Labour believe they can spend their way out of debt. They have this idea. So the most important thing. So you can borrow your way out of debt. By the way, it is possible to do it if you invest in something which costs. Which makes you more money than the debt cost to service.
Exactly,
The problem is when Labour say we're investing in public services, it's not investing, it's spending. Now, there's nothing wrong with spending on public services, but when you say I'm investing in the NHS, well, there's no return on the investment, right? No. So when they go, if you were to say I've borrowed 10 grand to invest in Apple, then that is an investment. If you say I borrowed 10 grand to invest in the NHS, it's spending. Therefore, you cannot borrow your way out of debt. You can't do it.
I mean, if you borrow money, sooner or later, whoever you borrowed it, wherever you borrowed it from, you've got to pay it back. And then you're right in the mire if you can't pay it back.
The problem is the other problem with Labour is they believe that any expansion of the working population is an expansion of the economy. It's actually not. If what you do is you increase the size of the public sector and destroy the private sector, you're not building the economy. What you're doing is reducing the economy.
Because the tax from the private sector has to pay for the public sector.
What there actually is what I think Dan Hannan described this as the productive and unproductive economy. And this is purely in financial terms, so I'm not slagging anybody off in the public sector. But if you want to generate a profit, you are in the productive sector. Yeah. If you are providing a service, i.e. you work for the public, you are the unproductive side of the economy. And productive and unproductive is not an insult. It's just saying what generates a profit and what doesn't. If you increase the size of the public sector, you reduce the size of the private sector and you are poorer as a result. Fact.
Yeah, I just can't believe that nobody's doing anything about it.
Well, it's getting worse, isn't it, Steve? It's getting worse.
To be educated men or women, or are they? I don't think.
No, they're not. A lot of them lied on their CVs, and then they get caught up and end up crying.
Yeah. And Starmer said,
"What do you think about Rachel Reeves crying in the chamber? Should she be gone?"
They all should.
Yeah.
I've never known a party like it in all my life. And
who would you replace them with? Because we'll end up with no brainer, right?
I mean, I've got to be honest with you, if you replace with the Muppets, there'd be an improvement, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, Miss Piggy would probably make a good...
by the way, Rachel Reeves taking down all the pictures of the of previous male chancellors of the Exchequer.
Quite right.
Do you know what Rachel doesn't know? Shh! Don't tell her this. Up until fairly recently, Chancellor of the Exchequer was a junior official. The reason was because the only thing the government did was collected money, and so the First Lord of the Treasury, the Prime Minister, was the most senior Treasury official. The Chancellor of the Exchequer was merely the person that counted the coins when they came in to the public.
She can't even do that properly.
She couldn't even do that. All right, thank you so much to Stephen Walsall, and after the break we will be with Wayne in Leamington Spa. Can't wait.
Wow.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, before we go any further, our tech op tonight is Chris, whose real name is Dave. Right, so let's talk to Chris Rhodes, or Dave as his actual name is. So Chris, how are you?
I'm all right.
Okay, now what I want to know is this.
Yes.
We were talking about home ownership. You've recently bought a house, and that's not of interest to me. I don't care. I mean, I don't even care what you're called. So let's just be clear, I'm not that interested. But what I do want to know is this. You bought a house at auction.
Yes.
And Homes Under the Hammer offered to have you on the show. Right, explain what happened.
Well, you just get an email from the company.
From Dion Dublin?
Well, it came from via the auction house, and they said, did I want to go on Homes Under the Hammer?
Well, why didn't you?
And you said no, like Bill Oddie on This Is Your Life.
Well, yes.
Why? I mean, you know, you could have plugged the show. They could have done a lot.
Sorry, just stop, right. They often say there's no such thing as a producer, only a failed presenter, right? That's outraged the gallery. But okay, but you do your own radio show, don't you?
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
Give us a plug. What's the radio?
No, stop.
No.
Why is it that you want to be a presenter, you present your own show, and you weren't willing to be on Homes Under the Hammer? Could have been your big. It wouldn't have been your big break.
It wouldn't have been my big break.
It could have been. Did you not ask them for a fee?
They wouldn't give you a fee.
What?
Oh, no.
No, it wouldn't even give you a car.
Voluntary, yeah.
Oh, that's...
Well, what's the point in that? Everyone's got to have a piece of the pie.
Did you ever see that great?
Yeah, you were right.
That great episode of Dave Gorman where he said, if you watch Homes Under the Hammer, actually the vast majority of it is people walking around looking at the roof of their property, and what he did was he removed the music and just put the sound of footsteps on instead, and it just became really creepy.
Well, who used to present that? Used to work here, do a show here, didn't he? The Homes Under the Hammer guy was here all the time. Did the Celebrity Jungle thing, you know. What was
I know that bloke.
He
you
worked
about.
Here for ages.
I know
he
that
used
bloke.
to have the weekend. It was the sort of Homes Under the Hammer
Right, I'll tell you what we're
radio
going to do.
show.
I'll tell you what we're going to do.
They were massive.
Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go.
Great, that was.
Can you give me all the names of the presenters of Homes Under the Hammer? Right.
This is brilliant.
This is our.
It's just great comedy as well, this AI thing.
No, it wasn't great comedy. It was quite bad. That.
It was like Bernard Manning, wasn't it? It does Bernard Manning comedy.
I love that. My AI's like Bernard Manning. Martin Roberts.
That's it. All right, Martin. Yeah, he used to do a show at the weekends. Yeah, he did a home improvement show. Didn't go down very well, you know, because people don't want to talk about putting shelves up. But it was a great bloke, and I quite enjoyed the little sections in it. But you said no, you don't want to do Home Under the Hammer. You got a great deal though, but you're going to have to do it. Basically, was walls and with no roof. You've got to build the house, haven't you? Basically,
it wasn't that bad. It was the kitchen was a disaster area. It's in southeast London.
So you've just said that you bought a 2-bedroom flat in southeast London for less than 200 grand.
Yeah.
I have to say to you, that is very much about. Do you know? For me, right? So I'm no DIY expert or anything like that, but it strikes me that you'd be better with a ruin. Not a ruin.
They say buy the worst house on the best street.
No, but if you
he bought the worst house on the worst street.
But if you're talking about, say, a flat that's structurally sound, but is a dump inside, that's good because you get to choose your own thing. I'll tell you what the worst thing is.
Don't buy leasehold. It wasn't leasehold, was it?
There is a leasehold on it, yes.
We'll get the freehold. Oh! But that means they'll have a choice over what you do. You've got to buy the freehold, Dave.
The posh. I'll tell you what I find depressing.
Got to buy the freehold,
Dave. Is when you see these posh houses, really, you know, the sort of £3 million, £5 million houses, and people put £100,000 kitchens in, and then live in the house for 3 years. The next person comes in and rips them out.
Yeah, I mean, that is terrible. But the thing about the leasehold system, it's £1 billion fraud because basically you can own a block of flats to the lease on it. You say, right, you need this, doing that, doing. You can't argue with them. You have to pay them. They'll get their own contractors as backhanders and that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not changing the legislation because, of course, the Lords and the Queen and the King and the monarchy, all the very powerful people, benefit from these laws. It doesn't happen in Scotland.
I'll tell you the one.
Actually, my leasehold company's quite good. They
they are some good ones, but in the main, there's a lot of shysters.
Where are you living at the moment, anyway?
I will tell you. I'll tell you in a second. I'll tell you the worst leaseholder.
He's everywhere.
The worst leaseholder to have of them all is the Church of England. England, the sharks and vipers that live in there. So where am I living at the moment? So on the 5th of August, I moved back to Windsor, but in the meantime, I'm staying with my dad. Although it has to be said, where I actually live when I'm down south, I live at the London School of Economics.
I'll tell you who's bad as a freeholder. The royal family, because like, if you live in Regent's Park...
Ash is just not engaged, right? He's just continuing with his... Sorry, go on.
I mean, the royals, when they own the actual freehold, that's where you can't... There's a lot of things that you can't do special laws for them.
We want to know where you're living at the London Home of Economics.
London School of Economics. So
basically, that's a Hamas hotbed, isn't it?
So look, I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing, which I think is sensible. So basically, I at the moment am only in London for a day and a half a week. Right, so what I do is, people don't know this, but we are in the news building. I have 2 offices in the news building. The other one's on the 3rd floor. So tomorrow morning, I will start work at my other job on the 3rd floor of the news building, which is in a private rented office, which has got nothing to do. And you can't even get in it, like my pass gets in, but yours doesn't. But anyway, basically, I just cram everything into my day and a half. I stay on Thursday nights at the London School of Economics because it's holiday time and you can book a room in the halls of residence. And then on believe it or not, what I then do, and this is why people are confused about what I do, after I finish work on Friday, I go downstairs to the green room, I watch telly until 5 a.m, and then I go to Euston Station and get the first train back to Manchester.
Blimey.
That good.
That's impressive.
That's one night at the London School. Do you know what? I always wanted to get into the LSE, and who knew that you could get it for 80 quid a night?
That's not bad, is it? What's the room like? They're quite lavish now.
What do you think it's like? It's not lavish.
Oh.
It's not lavish. As they always say, you always know you're in a student hall of residence because you walk out of the shower with more pubes than when you went in. More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So I want to congratulate my good friend Liam Downer-Sanderson, who has just won the Fulham Town by-election in Hammersmith and Fulham. Not a particularly shocking result, actually, that the Conservatives have retained Fulham, but it has to be said that Labour are down 10%, 10.6% swing against them, down from 26 to 16.5. I mean, a really awful result. And it has to be said, look, the Conservatives are down 1.7. They were previously on 45%. Not a surprise in Fulham. But actually, I have to say, to see the Conservatives hold up and Labour go down by 11%, I think really reflects how badly Labour are doing at the moment. OK, let's go to Grace in London. Grace, you're on Talk.
Hi.
Hi,
Grace. Good day so far.
Morning.
It's only just started. I heard you talk about the situation with Bob Dylan earlier.
Yes. Yes, earwigging, were we?
One thing that was said was that we have a British Christian population.
Yep.
I would argue that most of people in Britain don't really think about God at all.
I agree.
Pardon?
I agree.
Yeah, so, to be Christian is not really just about where you're born. It's actually about choosing to commit to Jesus, and each person gets to make that decision for themselves. But one is not really a Christian just on the basis of being British.
Yes.
It's about deciding.
Well, we have slightly disagreed with that before, because what we've said is there are atheists, in fact, lots of atheists in this country who are affected by Christian values because they've percolated through.
Well, you
society.
can be culturally Christian, where you're not even religious, but you're culturally Christian.
I don't know. I guess if you use the whole phrase culturally Christian, that makes sense. But I would say to be a Christian in itself means to choose to turn to Jesus because you believe that he's died for us, and that's each person can make that choice. But I do agree that he's absolutely impacted some of the values that we have in a society, even amongst people who don't believe in him at all. That's completely true. And I think that one of the things that sticks out to me about the Bob Dylan thing is that it's so hateful. I would completely concur with those who are concerned for people in Gaza. It seems, so far as I can discern, it's hard to know what's going on exactly.
It was revelling in hate, wasn't it, that performance, and the crowd? It was like...
Yes. I'm concerned for the Palestinians who are suffering, but to shout...
And by the way, Grace, can I just say...
Well, they're suffering because of the terror groups.
Some people haven't watched and listened to the whole show. We had a guy on who was a doctor in the Israeli Defence Force. There was no doubt that he was extremely concerned about the plight of the people of Gaza as well. No doubt.
Yeah, and so my point is that we have, as a culture for a while, because of the teachings of Jesus kind of percolating, as you said, we've had the idea, even if one's not following Jesus, we've had the idea from his teachings that a good thing to aim towards in theory is to love your enemies, which sounds mad, but we've had this idea that that's, in theory, a good thing to aim towards. And most people don't really aim towards it because we naturally, as human beings, are tribal. But we've had that kind of ideal in our society. But now what you have with people like this guy on stage at Glastonbury is you have people really, putting the idea of hatred up there as a virtue.
Yes.
And
it's almost like Ken would say Antichrist. It's like they're followers of the Antichrist.
Do you know, Grace, that's a really good point. Let me think about this out loud. So what you're saying is, that, look, love thy neighbour is an attempt to make us a fairer and safer society. Obviously, we're never going to achieve, loving thy enemy or whatever. But you're right. These people want to revel in hatred. And actually, it's really interesting because you hear people all the time, and we've tried to debate it before, about how to save the people of Gaza. And people just repeat back, IDF, Israel, get rid of this person, inside. And you go, yeah, but what about the ordinary Gazans? They just don't give a toss.
I'm getting the impression increasingly when I try to talk to people who are going on about Gaza all the time that
they're not bothered.
They're more concerned about hating.
Yes.
The Israeli, the IDF, and this is genuinely true, care more about Gaza. They really don't want to kill Gazan kids, and the Hamas do want them to die because they'll be martyred. And look at the IRGC. They use child soldiers, and if you were under 12, what they did with the child soldiers, because they were too small to fight, they'd run them across minefields to blow up the mines. They lost hundreds of thousands of people like that, kids.
But what you're saying, Grace, is really, really interesting, which is this, and I've heard Jewish people make this suggestion, but I've never heard it codified in the way that you've codified it, which is to say hate is a virtue. And actually what you need to do is find a moral justification for your hatred. You hate the Jews, so let's find a reason for hating them. And actually let's stand up and say, I am proud to hate this person, but I have a justification. And what I do is I invite you to hate them as well, and I'm going to justify why I hate
Confirmation
them.
bias.
And actually what that is, it is just a natural extension of that whole concept of virtue signalling. Because actually what you've said is, you've said, I'm a bad person. right? And I hate people because I'm a bad person. But I am going to now make a virtue out of it and explain to you why my badness makes me inherently good.
Yeah, they're essentially, well, some of them seem to be kind of using the suffering of the people of Gaza as a way to feel
So what you're saying is, well, it has to be said, this is the criticism that is levelled at some people who are in, who are in, well, for want of a better phrase, it's not a great phrase, the Holocaust industry, because I worry sometimes when you see on YouTube, I don't know if you know, but you can see what bits of the video have been watched the most. And it has to be said that when there's a Holocaust documentary, it's the really gory bits that people seem to watch the most. Now, do they watch it most because they're more shocked by it or because they enjoy it or whatever? But there is no doubt there are some people who revel in hate and destruction. And I just wonder whether you're right.
That's the human condition, though. It happens on the news. They don't put good news stories. It's always bad news. It's the human...
But what she's saying is, these people don't care about the Gazans. What they want is to revel in the maximum amount of disgust, violence and abuse, and then explain why that licenses them to hate people they didn't like anyway because they're just big racists.
I mean, it seems to me such a shame that if people are genuinely concerned about social justice and people who are suffering as they might claim they are, they could be raising awareness or raising money for people in our world who are in really great need.
But Grace, if you cared about Gaza, and I don't really care about Israel and Gaza, but if you ask me about it, then it seems to me the main problem here is poor governance in Gaza. The invasion, you can rebuild Gaza relatively easily, and even people who've died will be mourned, but then you move on, don't you? That's the same as any human society. It amazes me, and the reason why I think you're right, Grace, is that when you talk to people who are pro-Palestinian, they're not pro-Palestinian, they're not pro-Gazan enough to care about good governance in Gaza.
Well, it's the same with Iran. People are having a go about what they're doing in Iran, but actually they're not backing up the Iranian people who are outside the embassy getting beaten up by the IRGC. Protect the Iranian people. The IRGC are the enemy. Anyway, thanks, Grace. We've got a one light to call.
By the way, what a brilliant point Grace made. This whole idea of love those people who hate you, turn the other cheek. The reason why that was being preached was because the other alternative is to revel in hatred and suffering. And that's what Bob Vylan did. I think what we can say is, actually, the truth of the matter is, Bob Vylan are twisted, hate-filled racists who found an excuse to venerate their own hatred. Cindy is in Michigan. Cindy, you're on top.
Howdy doody.
Hi, gentlemen. Yeah, I want to say first and foremost, I stand with the Jewish people.
Well, I'm gonna have a donut
to celebrate. He's gonna have a donut to celebrate that. So, what else do you want to talk about, Cindy? What else?
Well, I want to talk about. I want to turn this on a lighter subject.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law is coming over, and I'm cooking up a bunch of homemade Mexican food. Do you gentlemen like Mexican food?
What you mean, like what is it? Fajitas and nachos.
Well, like
a burrito,
tacos, like carne asada tacos, burritos.
I'll tell you what I like. The Mexicans cook navy beans without that awful sugar sauce that we have in the UK.
Oh no! Well, I do a mixture of pinto and black.
Do you do the mushy peas? You know they do that green stuff, the mushy peas.
Guacamole.
Yeah, they call it guacamole, but
I'm also making guacamole too.
Yeah, it's green, isn't it? And
all
tasty.
of that. Yes, I'm cooking up a.
Have you ever had mushy peas, Cindy?
The mushy peas?
You never had mushy peas?
No.
Remember,
you get the peas, boil them up, mush them, and have them with your chips.
Do you know the famous story of Peter Mandelson that isn't true?
Yeah.
When he became MP for Hartlepool, Neil Kinnock made this story up. He went into the chippy and he said, "I'll have fish chips and the guacamole dip." It's mushy.
No, but seriously, you should research mushy peas and introduce them to your local neighbours.
I will do that.
Add vinegar as well. Add vinegar to it. It adds a bit of flavour.
That sounds very good.
Repulsive.
Vinegar.
Yeah.
And one question about your parliament. What kind of citizenship do people need to be in Parliament?
Oh,
here in America, you
don't have to be
you don't. The voting that went down, like, what's going on with your
Okay,
Parliament?
so here is the bit that people don't understand. To be a member of the British Parliament, you have to be a British citizen, or an Irish citizen, or a citizen of British Overseas Territory, or a British protectorate. I don't think there are any left.
You can be a foreign-born person.
No, hang on, let's go through the list. You can be a citizen of the United Kingdom, a citizen of the Irish Republic, a citizen of any Commonwealth country, a citizen of any British protectorate, a citizen of any British Overseas Territory. Those are the list of people.
We've had prisoners, people in prison, stand as MPs and become MPs while they're in prison.
So, here is something.
I suspect something's going on here because of this vote that you were talking about early on in the beginning of the show.
Yeah. So just to be clear, if you are a Pakistani on a work visa in the United Kingdom, so you can only stand as long as you are legally in the United Kingdom. So you have a visa, you can't just be on holiday. But if you are a Pakistani on a work visa in the United Kingdom, you can not only run for Parliament, you can be the Prime Minister. Amazingly, you do not have to be a British national to be the British Prime Minister.
Ouch. No, we need to change this. Okay, we need